This story starts in a training hall. Two shirtless men clashed fiercely in it. Their bodies moved with speed and precision, kicks and punches colliding with bursts of impact. Our main character, Su Hong, launched a powerful strike, while his opponent blocked and countered with equal force. Their fists met in midair, creating a shockwave that echoed through the hall. As the bout ended, Su Hong's opponent stumbled back, clutching his chest in pain. He winced and muttered that it hurt like hell. Around them, other students continued their own sparring sessions, the sound of hits filling the large, brightly lit training hall. That classmate called out to Su Hong, praising his progress. He said that Su Hong's diamond fist had improved again, and asked if he had reached the level of subtlety. Su Hong adjusted his stance and calmly replied that he had reached subtlety 2 days ago. Subtlety was one of the martial arts realms in this world. Mastery of any martial art could be divided into 5 levels: entry, proficiency, subtlety, great accomplishment, and perfection. Each stage represented a new depth of understanding and power. Hearing Su Hong's answer, the classmate's eyes widened with admiration. Giving a thumbs up, he said that in terms of diamond fist, nobody in their class could match Su Hong's level. Su Hong then turned toward his classmate and asked with determination if he had rested enough, suggesting they continue their training. His words carried a sense of tireless drive that made the other student freeze in surprise. His expression changed to irritation as he yelled that Su Hong was a training maniac. He grabbed his bag and declared that he was leaving to go home and eat instead. Su Hong was surprised as he watched his classmate dash toward the exit. At the door, the classmate waved and cheerfully said goodbye to Teacher Lee, who was just entering the hall. The teacher, looking calm but slightly exasperated, reminded him to put his clothes on properly before leaving. The student laughed awkwardly and hurried off, still half-dressed. Teacher Lee then looked around the hall until his eyes settled on Su Hong. His tone became serious as he said that he had finally found him. He asked Su Hong if he was applying for the martial division, his voice firm and expectant. As Su Hong wiped sweat from his neck, the teacher continued, asking why he hadn't yet paid the 30,000 yuan registration fee, warning that registration would close next Monday. Hearing that, Su Hong paused, looking slightly tense. Lowering his head, he asked in a quiet tone if the teacher could give him a few more days. The teacher sighed and softened his expression. He told Su Hong that he understood his family was struggling, but there was nothing he could do about it. The rules were strict, and exceptions weren't allowed. Hearing that, Su Hong fell silent, his eyes showing a trace of worry and determination mixed together. Late at night, the training hall was silent, except for the sound of fists cutting through the air. The bright lights reflected off the polished wooden floor, while the moon shone faintly through the glass ceiling. In the center of the hall stood Su Hong, alone, his duffel bag nearby. He moved tirelessly, practicing his techniques again and again. Each punch echoed sharply, showing his frustration and determination. As he exhaled heavily, his thoughts focused on the words from earlier: 30,000 yuan for the registration fee. The number repeated in his mind over and over. Sweat ran down his body, his breathing heavy as he struck the air with even more force, whispering to himself, 30,000 yuan, 30,000 yuan. His mind drifted back to his childhood. He remembered a time when he was only 3 years old, crying amidst rubble and smoke. His parents had died during a ferocious beast disaster, leaving him all alone among the ruins. The memory of loss and helplessness still lingered vividly in his heart. After that tragedy, his uncle and aunt had taken him in, raising him as part of their family. He looked at a photograph showing all of them smiling together, a happy family that had supported him through everything. Once they discovered his talent in martial arts, they encouraged him wholeheartedly, helping him pursue training even when times were tough. Because in this era where the world was plagued by monstrous beasts, martial artists were considered the top earners, protectors, and symbols of hope. It was a path of both glory and survival. Yet as Su Hong looked down, his fists tightened. He whispered bitterly that he had trained in martial arts so his family could live better lives, but instead he was making things harder for them. His expression turned heavy with guilt and frustration, his body trembling under the weight of his own ambition and helplessness. Late at night, the quiet street was lit by a single street lamp, its light spilling across the narrow road. The small apartment building stood still under the calm blue sky, with the faint glow of indoor lights showing signs of life within. Su Hong returned home, his steps slow and tired. He stopped outside the door, his hand resting on the handle as he heard voices coming from inside. His aunt and uncle were talking about money again. His uncle asked how much they were short on rent since the payment date was approaching. But his aunt replied softly that rent could wait. They should focus on paying Su Hong's registration fee first. His uncle agreed, saying that Hong's talent was exceptional and that he would surely become someone great one day. He added that they couldn't afford to hold him back, no matter what it took. Su Hong's expression darkened as he listened. His aunt and uncle's voices softened again. His aunt suggested stopping her medication to save money, saying they didn't help anyway. But his uncle quickly refused, insisting he would take on an extra job so she could rest and not worry about anything. Standing silently outside, Su Hong clenched his fists. The sound of their kind words weighed heavily on him. He pressed his hands against his ears, unable to bear hearing any more of their sacrifices. Moments later, he pushed open the door with a forced smile and called out, "Uncle, Aunt, I'm home." His aunt smiled warmly, telling him he must be exhausted from practicing so late again. Su Hong tried to step forward and help, offering to take over her chores. But his aunt waved him off with a proud grin, saying couldn't she handle this little thing. His uncle firmly told him to go rest. His aunt chuckled and gently reminded him to listen and get some sleep. Su Hong looked at them both, his chest tightening with a mix of gratitude and guilt. The warmth of their home contrasted deeply with the struggle behind it. The night moonlight filtered through the window, casting soft patterns across the small room. Su Hong lay awake on his bed, staring quietly at the ceiling. Thoughts of his uncle and aunt filled his mind. They had already sacrificed so much for him. Clenching his fists under the blanket, he silently promised himself that he wouldn't let them suffer any longer. In his mind, he spoke to them, saying that they had done more than enough for him, and that from now on he would handle his own problems. His eyes hardened with resolve, as a plan began to form. He knew that for a martial practitioner to earn tens of thousands in just a few days, there was only one place to go. The next day, sunlight gleamed on a tall building surrounded by trees. It was the entrance to the underground fight club. Inside, an electrifying atmosphere filled the air as the announcer's voice echoed across the arena. "Folks in the crowd, welcome to the Martial Disciple Guard Challenge. No holds barred, life or death, victory is all that matters." In the center of the brightly lit ring stood a tall man wearing a Red Bull mask, his body covered in muscle. The announcer's tone rose with excitement as she introduced him, saying that today, holding down the stage, was the one and only Mr. Minotaur. The crowd roared as the rules were announced. Anyone who could win 4 matches in a row would walk away with 60,000 in prize money. Lose even once, and they'd get nothing. Among the audience, whispers began to spread. Some people noticed a masked newcomer stepping into the arena. One guy asked who that guy was, saying he had never seen him before. Another crossed his arms and said he was a newbie. A third spectator leaned forward, frowning, saying a newbie jumping straight into the guard challenge was just asking to die. As the lights focused on the stage, the tension thickened. Su Hong, hidden beneath the bull mask, was about to risk everything. Under the blinding lights of the arena, the announcer nudged Su Hong, who was wearing the bull mask. With a confident smile, she told him to liven things up and get the crowd excited. Su Hong tilted his head in confusion, scratching his mask. He asked how he was supposed to hype up the crowd. She rolled her eyes slightly, waving her hand dismissively. She explained that he should provoke them, throw some trash talk, stir them up. She muttered under her breath about how troublesome newbies could be. Hearing that, the masked Su Hong nodded firmly and gave a thumbs up. Then, stepping forward to the center of the stage, he clenched his fists and shouted with full confidence, declaring himself invincible against anyone below a martial artist. He challenged all weaklings to come and face him. Hearing that, the crowd immediately burst into noise. Some were shocked at his arrogance, whispering among themselves. One man frowned and said he was too cocky, while another laughed and called him a badass. Others muttered that he wouldn't even know how he died later. Excitement filled the air as people began chanting loudly, calling for his defeat, urging the fight to start. The announcer raised her microphone high and shouted, "Let's begin the match." As the crowd's cheers echoed through the arena, Su Hong stood tall behind his bull mask, his eyes sharpened with focus. He could feel the killing intent surrounding him. It was far stronger than anything he had felt before, but he wasn't surprised. This was the underground fight club, where life and death were always close. Taking a deep breath, he thought to himself that this was the only way to earn the tuition money quickly. He tightened his fists and murmured in determination, hoping that his diamond fist would bring him the victories he needed. The moment the match began, one of the fighters, a man wearing a mouse-shaped mask, stepped forward and shouted angrily at Su Hong. "Cocky punk. I'll play with you," he yelled, his body already in motion as he lunged forward with sharp momentum, standing calmly in the center of the ring. Su Hong watched the opponent's movements with a steady gaze from behind his bull mask. His sharp eyes analyzed the man's form in an instant. He noticed the speed and aggression, but also saw the weakness in the man's footing. His lower stance was unstable, his balance off. Su Hong smirked slightly, thinking to himself that this opponent would be easy to handle. The mouse-masked fighter closed in on Su Hong fast, shouting, "What are you daydreaming about?" He swung his fist towards Su Hong's head with a burst of power, but before the strike could land, Su Hong's arm moved like lightning. Energy gathered around his hands, swirling with bright blue force. With precise control, he unleashed his martial technique, the floating light palm. His glowing hand slammed straight into the attacker's face, the impact echoing across the arena. The mouse-masked man's eyes rolled back as his body was lifted off the ground and sent crashing into the floor with tremendous force. The crowd erupted in shock as Su Hong stood over his fallen opponent, the air around him still trembling from the energy of his strike. Under the blinding lights of the arena, Su Hong, wearing the bull mask, stood tall over his fallen opponent. Raising his fist high toward the ceiling, he shouted loudly, demanding the next challenger. The crowd erupted into cheers as the announcer's excited voice echoed through the speakers. "Minotaur, 1 win," she declared, her tone filled with energy. The audience roared in approval. Shouts of "badass" and "unbelievable" filled the air, the tension in the arena growing thicker with excitement. Soon after, another fighter stepped onto the stage. He was a tall man with curly blonde hair and a red mask covering his face. His muscular frame and confident smirk made it clear that he wasn't a rookie. The man taunted Su Hong, calling it a lucky break. Cracking his knuckles, he told Su Hong that his luck had run out now that he was facing him. Su Hong, still wearing his bull mask, stood calmly. His eyes narrowed as he observed the new opponent. Then, in a steady voice, he gestured for the man to make the first move. He analyzed his opponent's physique and aura, noting that the man seemed skilled and experienced, just the right kind of fighter to test the true strength of his diamond fist technique. The air grew still for a moment before the blonde fighter roared, charging forward with incredible speed. "Incoming," he shouted, as his massive frame blurred into motion. The two fists collided in a flash of blue energy, the shockwaves spreading across the stage. Both men gritted their teeth as their power clashed violently. The masked opponent widened his eyes, shocked by the strength he felt. It was the powerful fist wind that made him realize the impact behind Su Hong's strike. But Su Hong, calm and unshaken, analyzed the exchange with precision. His opponent's punch was strong, but still weaker than his. As the clash of fists echoed through the arena, Su Hong punched his opponent with his other hand. His punch landed squarely on the opponent's face. The masked man's mind raced as he felt his opponent's overwhelming strength. Su Hong's eyes sharpened beneath the bull mask. His analytical gaze focused on the fighter's movements. After taking the punch, his opponent's upper body was overcommitted, and his waist was left wide open with flaws. Taking advantage of that instant, Su Hong's body twisted sharply, and he kicked his opponent with explosive power. The impact sent the opponent flying across the ring, the force blasting through the air like thunder. The audience gasped in disbelief. "Holy crap! He's strong!" someone shouted from the stands. Dust and shattered flooring marked where the opponent had crashed, lying motionless. Su Hong straightened his back, his voice echoing through the silent arena. "Next," he said firmly. The announcer jumped with excitement, raising her microphone. "Minotaur, 2 wins in a row," she shouted, her voice filled with awe and energy as the crowd erupted once again. Inside the underground fighting arena, the crowd roared as Minotaur stood victorious once again in the center of the ring. In a luxurious viewing room above the ring, several men in black suits stood guard around an older man dressed sharply in a black suit. He watched the scene below with calm interest, his tone low and assessing. Looking at Su Hong, the man murmured that he wasn't even a quasi-martial artist, yet his strength was far above that of average disciples. That kid was no joke. Just then, the announcer's voice echoed through the loudspeakers. "Minotaur, 3 wins in a row," she shouted, excitement filling the air. "That man in the suit said Su Hong was not elite, but solid enough," he commented with a smirk, saying he was perfect for throwing matches. From behind him, a younger man wearing a fox-like mask spoke with determination. He called the old man in the suit teacher, and said he would recruit him. The older man turned slightly, his tone calm but commanding. He told his disciple not to let on that he had already advanced to martial artist. Meanwhile, down in the arena, Su Hong wiped the sweat from his face. His eyes remained sharp and focused as he analyzed his situation. He thought that his subtlety-level diamond fist had no trouble dealing with these regular disciples. As the defeated fighters were carried away, Su Hong clenched his fist, his expression steady and confident. A faint smirk crossed his lips, as he thought that with one more win, he would get that 60,000. But the crowd suddenly erupted in excitement, their voices echoing through the arena. Someone shouted from the stands that it was White Fox. Su Hong, wearing his bull mask, froze for a moment and turned his gaze toward the entrance. Everyone's eyes widened slightly when they realized that White Fox was challenging too. From the opposite end of the stage, the man known as White Fox walked calmly onto the platform. The crowd murmured, whispering among themselves. Someone asked if he wasn't Quasi. One person said a Quasi fighting against disciples was a total cheat. Su Hong's expression hardened as he assessed the situation. Hearing that his opponent this time was Quasi, he muttered under his breath that this one was tricky, but he couldn't lose. Determination gleamed in his eyes as his stance lowered, ready for battle. Across from him, the white-haired man in the fox mask smiled faintly. A confident glint flashed in his golden eyes. Stepping forward with composed elegance, he adjusted his white suit and spoke in a calm, steady tone. He told Su Hong not to fear, saying he knew his limits. Under the bright arena lights, the announcer raised her hand and shouted across the stage, declaring the start of the guard challenge final round. Both fighters stood ready, Minotaur with his fists clenched, and White Fox calmly standing tall in his white suit. The crowd held its breath as tension filled the air. Then, with a sharp cry, the announcer commanded, "Begin." In an instant, both figures burst forward, moving so fast that their afterimages trailed behind. The ground cracked beneath their feet as they collided in the center of the stage. Su Hong's eyes focused sharply beneath his bull mask. He thought to himself that his realm was lower, so his first move had to be all in. His muscles tightened, and with a roar, he launched a powerful punch straight at White Fox. The impact tore through the air like thunder. A wave of force spread outward, shaking the ring. But as the shock cleared, Su Hong's expression changed. Something felt off. He staggered back slightly, his eyes widening. After feeling his opponent's power, he realized that he was no Quasi. Sweat rolled down Su Hong's face as his thoughts raced. He realized that his opponent was a real martial artist. He was holding back his chi and blood on purpose. Su Hong's opponent wasn't just strong, he was far beyond the level of an ordinary challenger. White Fox's golden eyes gleamed from behind his mask as he drew in a deep breath. His voice was calm yet filled with restrained power. As he inhaled, a faint red aura began to rise around him, swirling like flames. Then, in a blur of movement, he stepped forward. His fist crackled with energy as he roared, rushing thunder fist, striking Su Hong in the face. The impact hit like a lightning bolt. Su Hong's body was sent flying backward, blood spraying from his mouth. He struggled to regain his balance, disbelief flashing across his eyes. He thought in shock if this was the strength of a true martial artist. The sheer force of the punch left the crowd stunned. In the audience, several people recognized the technique instantly. One guy shouted that it was triple ringing thunder fist. Another laughed, saying Minotaur was toast. On the stage, White Fox didn't stop. His fists moved like a storm, every strike heavy and precise. He taunted Su Hong between blows, asking if he was just going to defend. He told Su Hong to fight back and show him what he had. Su Hong, in the Minotaur mask, blocked with both arms, his muscles trembling under the continuous barrage. The sound of fists colliding echoed like thunderclaps across the arena. Inside, he gritted his teeth, thinking desperately that if this kept up, it was over. His mind raced as he struggled to stay on his feet. Gotta find a counter chance, he thought, scanning for an opening through the blinding flurry of punches. White Fox, surrounded by a red aura, advanced relentlessly. Each blow carried the weight of a storm, forcing Minotaur further back. White Fox's movements were sharp, precise, and merciless. Suddenly, White Fox found an opening. Minotaur raised his fists to block an incoming strike, but the force behind it still tore through his defense. His eyes widened as the impact exploded against his guard. With a roar, White Fox swung his fist, colliding against Su Hong's face with all his strength. The arena shook from the clash as Su Hong was sent flying backward. He hit the ground hard, his vision blurring as pain coursed through his body. His consciousness started fading fast, his body refusing to move. White Fox stood tall, brushing the dust off his white suit. Calmly, he stepped forward and placed his foot on Minotaur's chest. His voice was cold yet casual as he said, "Brother, This match's prize money? 0 for you. A faint mocking smile curved beneath his mask as he spoke calmly. He said that his teacher had invited Minotaur to join them, to throw fights in their favor from now on. If he agreed, they would pay him the prize money regardless of today's outcome. Su Hong, in the Minotaur mask, glared up at him through the pane, his breathing heavy but his resolve unbroken. With a strained voice, he spat out his answer, saying that he would never do that kind of dirty work. Hearing that, White Fox's expression darkened. His tone dropped as he leaned closer, warning Minotaur to think it over carefully, because refusing them was something he couldn't handle. But even while lying bloodied on the floor, Minotaur's voice carried defiance. He shouted that people like them dared to call themselves martial artists while doing such disgraceful things. White Fox let out a small laugh and straightened up. "Guess no deal then," he said coldly. In the next moment, his expression turned vicious. His aura flared red as he charged forward, shouting that he would end Minotaur right there, and that from now on he could dream of being a martial artist only in his sleep. He raised his leg to attack. At that moment, Minotaur's eyes widened, blood dripping down his face, as fury and determination burned within them. White Fox lunged in to deliver the finishing blow, but Su Hong moved swiftly and dodged his attack. White Fox's golden eyes widened in shock as something unexpected happened. Minotaur's body trembled, flames of determination burning around him as he rose to his feet. His breathing was heavy, but his voice carried unshakable resolve. He muttered to himself that he couldn't fail here. He couldn't fail at all. Step by step, he forced his battered body forward, his fiery aura growing brighter with each breath. White Fox froze in disbelief as he watched. His eyes widened behind the mask, and his mind screamed in shock. He couldn't believe it. Minotaur had taken a direct hit from his rushing thunder fist and was still standing. As memories flashed before his eyes, Minotaur's expression hardened. He remembered his family, the uncle and aunt who had sacrificed so much for him. He whispered that he wanted them to live good lives, that he couldn't let their years of effort go to waste. But another thought tore through him. Could he really abandon the martial artist's code just to survive? The question burned inside his heart. A vision of his family appeared before him, but the image shattered like glass. His voice rose in defiance as he shouted, "No, that future, hell no." At that moment, a glowing system screen flickered before him, its cold light forming words. "Then, for your family, for your faith, what price will you pay?" Minotaur's eyes blazed red. Lightning crackled around his body as he clenched his fists. His voice erupted with power and conviction as he shouted that he would give everything. In an instant, his aura exploded outward, engulfing the arena in a storm of fire and electricity. His eyes glowed fiercely as he stood tall once again, reborn through sheer willpower. A glowing screen appeared above Su Hong, asking what he was willing to give. Su Hong's body burned with red flames as he stood firm, and he answered with a powerful shout that he would give everything. Just as he said that, the scene in front of him shifted. His bull mask disappeared as he opened his eyes in a strange digital-looking space filled with vertical blue lights. His expression showed confusion as he looked around. He stood alone inside a large hall, and a huge dark shadow stretched behind him, forming monstrous shapes on the ground. He whispered a question, asking where this place was. A burst of golden light filled the hall. A towering, radiant figure appeared in front of him, its body shining like a golden statue with long, flowing limbs. Facing the blinding glow, Su Hong looked up as the figure asked who he was. The glowing figure leaned forward and said it would give him a chance. Its light began to scatter around the hall. Golden energy circled Su Hong. Rings of light wrapped around his body as the power gathered around him, swirling faster and brighter. The next second, a golden tablet appeared in front of him, with a loud shattering light. Su Hong stumbled back, staring at the shining screen, forming before his eyes. The tablet displayed his information. Su Hong looked at it in confusion as the words formed clearly. His name, Su Hong. His blood energy, 85. His spirit, 23. His physique, mortal body at 3%. His first quest, Path of the Arena. His diamond fist subtle mastery at 7%. Floating light palm proficient at 35%. Void step proficient at 56%. And his martial Dao points at 0%. He raised his hand toward the tablet, tapping it carefully. He wondered if the strange thing was touch-operated. The glowing screen continued to float before him, listing his quest. Su Hong saw the description telling him to train his martial arts and face White Fox outside. The quest objective was to hone his skills, raise Diamond Fist to Grand Achievement, and raise Floating Light Palm and Void Step to Subtle Mastery. For the quest reward, The system told him that this was a beginner tutorial, so there was no reward. Current progress showed his Diamond Fist subtle mastery at 7%, Floating Light Palm proficient at 35%, and Void Step proficient at 56%. It also noted that this quest could unlock a beginner tutorial. Su Hong read through it with narrowed eyes, quietly repeating the words beginner tutorial as he tried to understand. While he was thinking about that, something suddenly appeared behind him, forming from the blue light. The next second, Su Hong's head snapped sharply as a fast blow came toward his head from behind, cutting off his thoughts in an instant. It was a clone of Su Hong. It rushed toward him with a fierce strike, forcing Su Hong to lower his body and dodge. The two figures moved at high speed, their motions blurring as their blows passed each other by inches. Su Hong's eyes widened in shock. He realized the attacker looked exactly like him. He understood that the figure was his clone, and the clone was using Diamond Fist just like he did. As he watched the movements, he noticed that the clone's technique looked even more polished than his own, clean and precise, like a perfect demonstration. Su Hong's breathing steadied as he analyzed the fight. Seeing such a refined example in front of him, he thought it was a chance he could not waste. He tightened his stance and moved forward, deciding to learn from the flawless execution displayed by the clone. The two clashed again, their arms striking in a clean collision. Suddenly, the clone grabbed Su Hong's arm and moved to attack. Su Hong watched every detail, thinking that the clone seemed to be showing the technique step by step. But before he could react properly, the clone's attack came too fast. Su Hong's expression changed in panic as the punch hit him squarely in the torso. His body bent from the impact, and he cried out as the force blasted him backward. Su Hong slid across the floor, coughing lightly as he steadied himself. His clone stood firmly on the other side, the force of its last attack still rippling through the air. For a moment, Su Hong glanced at the golden panel glowing beside him. The progress bar under Diamond Fist showed a new number. He stared in surprise, remembering it had been 7% before. Now it displayed 10%. He wondered how he had improved so quickly. He tightened his stance again, realizing that fighting here really did allow him to raise his martial skills at an incredible speed. Both he and the clone rushed forward at the same time, their steps carving sharp lines across the floor as they closed the distance in an instant. Their fists clashed again and again. Each collision sent out shockwaves, and with every exchange, the mastery numbers on the floating panels increased. One panel showed Diamond Fist reaching 15%. Another panel flashed as Su Hong's level climbed to 23%. The two continued moving, their bodies blurring as they shifted positions. The Void Step progress bars rose as well. Su Hong's Void Step reached 59%, then climbed to 70%. The battle continued, the room filled with streaks of motion and rising skill levels as the two figures pushed each other forward. They clashed again and again, their fists and palms striking with blinding speed. Each impact sent shockwaves through the air as their movements grew sharper, faster, and more refined. As they exchanged blows, glowing system panels appeared around them. The panels showed the progress of their skills. Floating Light Palm rose from 39% to 47%. Diamond Fist, subtle mastery increased to 62%. Void Step, proficient climbed from 82% to 88%. Diamond Fist, subtle mastery surged to 88%. Floating Light Palm, proficient reached 95%. Void Step, proficient pushed even higher to 97%. Their movements grew even more explosive as their mastery continued rising. Then, one panel flashed brightly. Floating Light Palm, proficient hit 100%, and the technique evolved into Floating Light Palm, proficient subtle mastery. The fighter unleashed the newly mastered technique, striking forward with overwhelming force. Another panel lit up. Void Step, proficient reached 100%, changing into Void Step, proficient subtle mastery. His body blurred as he stepped through the air with perfect precision. A final golden panel filled the screen. Diamond Fist, subtle mastery reached 100%, transforming into Diamond Fist, subtle mastery grand achievement. He threw a crushing punch, the blow landing cleanly and sending his clone flying. With this, the battle ended. He stood alone in the quiet hall, breathing heavily, as golden fragments of the clone drifted around him. He lowered his fists and exhaled with exhaustion. He breathed out softly. A moment later, a system window appeared in front of him. The notification congratulated player Su Hong, telling him that he had completed the quest Path of the Arena. The quest rewards had been issued, and the system asked if he agreed to return to reality. He looked at it and whispered with a faint smile, "Thanks a lot." The next second, he returned to reality, where not even a second had passed. Wearing the bull mask, Su Hong stood calmly as flames rose around his body. His eyes glowed through the bull mask, and he gave a short reply, saying that he agreed. Across from him, White Fox watched the transformation with narrowed eyes. White Fox suddenly rushed forward. He called Su Hong a show-off and shouted for him to take his attack. His body shot across the arena in a straight line, wind trailing behind him. He attacked with explosive force and launched a fierce technique, his punch cutting through the air at high speed. But Su Hong moved even faster and dodged all his attacks easily. He then tilted his head slightly and answered in a low voice that White Fox's attack was too slow. Hearing that, White Fox's eyes widened. Before he could react, Su Hong's counterpunch smashed into him. The impact shattered the fox mask into pieces, sending fragments flying and knocking him backward. Su Hong rushed forward with fierce determination, his eyes sharp as debris scattered around him. The crowd in the stands gasped in shock as they watched the impact unfold. In the ring, the Minotaur-masked Su Hong stood tall and unmoving. His dark silhouette and glowing eyes loomed over his fallen opponent, who lay unconscious at his feet. The arena fell silent. A moment later, Su Hong looked toward the side of the ring where the announcer was standing. He spoke calmly, saying he had won the fourth match, and asked when he would receive his prize money. The announcer nearby blinked in surprise, before answering in a flustered tone. Inside the VIP viewing room, Fox Mask's teacher watched as the announcer announced the victory. She declared that Minotaur had successfully defended the arena and won the 60,000 yuan grand prize. The old man stared ahead in disbelief as he questioned how a martial apprentice could reach grand achievement in Diamond Fist, something even trained warriors struggled to do. He ordered his subordinates to follow the Minotaur and find out who he really was. The two men in suits bowed and replied that they understood. Sometime later, the night was quiet as Su Hong walked alone down a narrow street, his hands in his pockets and his steps echoing softly between the buildings. His expression remained calm, but his eyes shifted slightly, sensing something behind him. Farther back in the alley, two men in black suits hid in the shadows, watching him carefully. When Su Hong glanced over his shoulder, the two men stiffened. A moment later, he suddenly disappeared from their view, leaving them confused. They rushed farther into the alley, whispering anxiously. One of them complained that the boss had ordered them to uncover Su Hong's identity, yet they had already lost him. Above their heads, Su Hong clung effortlessly between the walls, suspended high above the alley. He watched them with a relaxed expression and muttered that they were still trying to tail him. The night sky hung quietly above Su Hong's neighborhood. 1 hour after escaping from the men tailing him, Su Hong returned home. Inside the house, Su Hong's family stared in shock at the huge stack of cash on the table. His uncle leaned forward with trembling hands and asked if he had robbed a bank, wondering where all that money came from. His aunt looked equally stunned, unable to believe her eyes. Su Hong sat across from them with a calm smile. He explained that he had been working as a sparring partner at a dojo. He said the dojo master thought he had potential, so he decided to sponsor Su Hong's training. His father frowned and reminded him that he had once said the dojo was extremely stingy. Su Hong reached out and held their hands, smiling brightly as he asked if they still didn't trust him. Hearing that, both his uncle and aunt softened. His aunt smiled with relief, and his uncle sighed happily. They said Xiao Hong would never do anything wrong, and praised him for finally making something of himself. Later that night, Su Hong moved quietly across the rooftop. Under the night sky, he sat beside a large, round water tank. He looked relaxed as he thought about his situation. He noted to himself that the martial exam registration fee was settled, and the rent was also settled. He added that his aunt's medical expenses would no longer be a problem either. A glowing system screen appeared in front of him. As he looked at it, he said that getting through this crisis was all thanks to the system. The screen displayed his name, Su Hong, along with his talent and stats. It showed his blood energy, spirit, and physique levels, along with 3 martial skills. Diamond Fist at Grand Achievement, 5%, Floating Light Palm at Subtle Mastery, 8%, and Void Step at Subtle Mastery, 9%. His martial Dao points were listed as 67. Su Hong observed that aside from his martial skill levels, the other stats didn't seem to have changed. Another notification appeared. It explained that he had gained 67 martial Dao points for defeating an opponent at a higher level. It said that martial Dao points could enhance blood energy and martial skills, and reminded him to allocate them wisely. Su Hong looked at the screen and said he should try it right now. He reached forward to adjust the numbers. A system sound followed, and the screen showed his blood energy rising to 90. Su Hong's eyes widened as energy surged through him. his entire body filled with heat and power. Flames of aura rose around him as he stood with a sharp, awakened expression. His clothes fluttered from the force of the energy as he felt the change taking place. Su Hong looked at the glowing screen in front of him. He whispered that a blood energy value of 90 was already equal to a quasi-warrior. Sweat slid down his face as he breathed out slowly. He then moved his hand across the transparent panel and said that he would pour all the remaining martial Dao points into blood energy. As he confirmed the action, lines of text appeared one after another, showing blood energy increasing by small amounts. As the numbers rose, he lifted his shirt slightly and examined his body. He noticed that his physical toughness had clearly improved, and even his injuries were almost healed. A strong wind swirled around him as he stood on the rooftop under the night sky. He could feel endless power gathering inside him. He realized he needed to find a place to test his current strength. He looked out across the rooftops, then leapt away from the building, moving quickly toward his next destination. He decided to go to the school's martial arena because they had a combat power tester there. Soon, he arrived at the outdoor martial arena of Star City No. 1 High School. His figure landed at the center of the wide circular platform under the moonlit sky. A Tier 1 combat power tester stood alone at the center. Su Hong walked toward the machine with steady footsteps. He stopped in front of it and prepared himself. He said that for his first punch, he would use 70% of his strength. Red energy flames rose around his body as he took his stance. His eyes sharpened, and a bright red glow flashed in one of them. He swung his fist forward with force. The punch landed on the tester, sending a powerful shockwave through the arena. Su Hong froze for a moment and let out a tense sound. He looked at the damaged machine with sweat on his face. He said the tester was too flimsy and wondered if they would make him pay for breaking it. Steam and sparks leaked from the machine as it continued to shake. Suddenly, a loud voice shouted from behind, complaining that it was noisy and asking what he was doing in the middle of the night. Hearing that, Su Hong quickly turned and sprinted away, thinking it was time to run. A few minutes later, an old man in pajamas stood beside the broken combat tester. He yelled angrily, asking which bastard had smashed the tester in the school's martial arena. He looked around and complained that in this school, only two little brats, Chen Shan and Li Tu, would dare to do something like that. The old man grew even more furious. His face turned red as he shouted that when school started he would definitely teach those two a good lesson. The next day, inside the gymnasium of Star City No. 1 High School, students gathered in a large group, while two people stood on the stage. The students talked among themselves as the gym filled with noise. Among the students, Chen Shan stood with a bandage on his head. Su Hong behind him looked confused and wondered why Chen Shan had been beaten up. Another student leaned closer and whispered that he heard Chen Shan had smashed the tester in the outdoor drill ground in the middle of the night and refused to admit it, so the principal punished him. Hearing this, Su Hong beside him sweated nervously, realizing that they had made Chen Shan take the blame. While they were talking, the two men stood by the microphone, one in a brown suit and the other in blue martial clothing. The man in the suit was the principal of Star City No. 1 High School. He told the students to quiet down. He explained that he had invited his old comrade, Chen Tian, a Tier 3 martial artist, to teach them a C-rank martial art called Thunder Rush Fist. He told the students that everyone must learn it well. Hearing that, the students reacted with excitement. One student whispered that it was his first time seeing a Tier 3 martial artist. Another pointed out that C-rank martial arts usually cost hundreds of thousands to learn at outside dojos. When Su Hong heard that it was Thunder Rush Fist, he immediately remembered that the white fox he fought had also used Thunder Rush Fist. The move created a punch that burst out with the impact of 3 punches at once. He thought about how expensive it would be to learn this martial art outside. He clenched his fist and decided that he must seize this opportunity. From the stage, Chen Tian then told the students there was no need for more talking. He announced that he would demonstrate the technique 10 times from start to finish, and how much they learned would depend on themselves. He prepared to begin and first adjusted his footsteps on the gym floor. Instructor Chen Tian demonstrated the Thunder Rush Fist. His body twisted sharply as he threw a powerful punch forward, wind swirling around his arm. He explained that the Thunder Rush Fist carried fierce and domineering momentum, and even at the basic level, a punch would produce the sound of thunder. The students watched as he continued. He said that at the proficient level, a person could strike out 3 sounds. He added that at the micro level, 5 sounds could be produced. He then moved into another stance and declared that at the mastered level, 7 sounds could be struck. Bright energy burst around him as he performed the technique and announced that this was his current realm. He faced the students again and stated that once someone reached the perfect realm, they would be able to strike out 9 sounds. But he told them not to aim too high, saying that reaching the basic level today would be good enough. He then prepared for another round and told everyone that he would start the second demonstration and that they should try to follow along. The students lined up and shouted while copying the movements. Hours passed. The gym floor was now filled with exhausted students sitting or lying down. Some said they couldn't learn it at all, while others complained about being tired. The instructor looked at them and asked if any of them had figured out the trick. A student who was Su Hong's friend sat on the floor trembling. Sweat dripped down his face as he cried out that C-rank martial arts were too hard to learn. He looked around beside him in confusion. He asked Su Hong if he had managed to learn it, but when he turned his head, Su Hong's spot was already empty. But before he could panic, a short distance away, Chen Shan stood proudly in a martial arts stance. Flames of energy rose faintly around him as he shouted that he had successfully reached the basic level. The other students stared in shock. Su Hong's friend wondered how Chen Shan's brain was built to learn it so quickly. He muttered that no wonder people called Chen Shan a genius. Across the gym, the principal stood with Chen Tian. The principal told him that the boy showing off was their school's #1 genius, Chen Shan, and asked if Chen Tian was interested in guiding him. Chen Tian watched calmly and replied that this level was only considered basic in other cities. Then a few minutes later, outside the gymnasium, sunlight fell across the stairs. Chen Tian walked beside the principal. He said that this batch of students wasn't impressive and that coming here was pointless. The principal answered that having even one student reach the basic level was already good enough. He asked if Chen Tian really expected them to find a top-tier genius. In the courtyard, as they walked side by side, Chen Tian told the principal that martial Dao cultivation was extremely cruel and that talent was simply too important. The principal nodded and replied that relying only on hard work without any opportunity was absolutely impossible. Just as they were talking, suddenly both of them stopped. Their eyes widened as loud explosive sounds echoed around them. They turned and saw that a burst of lightning appeared on the training grounds. Su Hong stood there with lightning wrapped around his body. Seeing him, Chen Tian shouted in shock, saying it was the 7-sound Thunder Rush Fist and that the school actually had such an expert. The principal beside him said it was impossible because he had never heard of it. As he stared through the fence, he pointed at Su Hong and shouted that it was a student, based on the clothes. In front of them, Su Hong struck out repeatedly, each punch releasing powerful sounds in the air. Instructor Chen Tian looked stunned and said he had only taught for half a day, yet a student had already reached mastery. The principal rested his face against the fence and asked if he had heard wrong, repeating that the student had made 9 sounds. But instructor Chen Tian stood frozen, trembling slightly. Seeing that, the principal asked him what was wrong. Instructor Chen Tian then lowered his head slightly. Sweat rolled down his face as he shouted that he understood everything now. The next second, lightning gathered around instructor Chen Tian's hand. He clenched his fist as bright sparks wrapped around it. In the next moment, the instructor swung his arm forward with force. He shouted the name of the move, while lightning and impact lines burst around his punch, releasing 8 sounds. After punching, instructor Chen Tian looked excited. Sparks circled his fist as he smiled proudly. The principal beside him was shocked, shouting that the instructor had reached 8 sounds. Instructor Chen Tian explained that watching the Thunder Rush Fist from that student earlier had inspired him, allowing him to break through. Then both of them rushed forward in panic. Instructor Chen Tian said it was not the time to talk and told the principal to quickly find the student who used that move. But when they reached the field, they looked around in confusion. The outline showed that someone had just been there, but the person was now gone. On the other hand, Su Hong, not knowing he was being watched, walked through the street at sunset. He rubbed his shoulder tiredly and said he didn't expect training a C-rank martial skill to be this exhausting, far harder than the D-rank Vajra Fist. Su Hong then opened his system status window. The system screen showed his information. It displayed his name, Su Hong, along with his vitality, spirit, and physique. It listed his martial skills: Thunder Rush Fist, at the perfect level; Vajra Fist, at 5% mastery; Floating Light Palm, at micro level 8%, and Void Step, at micro level 9%. Below that, the martial value was shown as 0. Su Hong looked at the glowing system screen and said that his Thunder Rush Fist had already reached the perfect realm. He explained that he now needed to find a way to earn martial values and try to break through to martial artist soon. He said that unlike last time, he did not need a life-and-death battle. He wondered if sparring normally with someone could also let him obtain martial values. While thinking all that, Su Hong arrived at the entrance of the Raging Thunder Dojo, his workplace. He stood before the open gate and looked inside. Annoyed, he thought to himself that he had finally arrived. Inside the dojo, many students practiced with spears. They moved quickly across the training hall, clashing their weapons against each other as they trained. One of the students noticed Su Hong and walked over. He asked Su Hong why he had come today. Su Hong smiled lightly and answered that nothing special was happening. He had simply come over to practice. While they were talking, suddenly, a man with purple hair stepped violently on a student's head, slamming him into the floor. The student's body shook from the impact. The purple-haired man looked down coldly. He shouted, asking how someone dared to say his teacher taught badly. He said that if the student's comprehension was poor, he should admit it. He demanded to know why excuses were being made. When Su Hong saw that purple-haired man, he asked his friend about the situation nearby. His friend explained that Su Hong hadn't been around lately, so he didn't know what had happened. He said the aggressive instructor was a newly arrived teacher who was very strong. He added that the instructor looked down on common students like them and taught his classes carelessly. He continued explaining that this purple-haired man was that instructor's disciple, a man named Li Yan, who was also very strong. As he said this, Li Yan stepped forward with a confident, arrogant expression. He threw a punch and mocked the person he was fighting, asking how someone of that level dared to challenge him. But before the punch landed, a hand suddenly grabbed Li Yan's wrist, stopping the attack. It was Su Hong who grabbed his hand. Su Hong calmly told him that they should stop here. Li Yan pulled back and angrily demanded to know who Su Hong was. He shouted that if Su Hong had the guts, he should fight him one-on-one in the arena. Su Hong answered without hesitation that he would oblige. Just then, the instructor walked in with an angry expression and shouted, asking why there was so much noise when class was starting. Seeing him, purple-haired Li Yan backed down and glared at Su Hong angrily, saying that Su Hong was lucky. Su Hong looked at him calmly and thought to himself that this person was a bit too arrogant. The instructor then stood before all the students and announced that it was the last day he would be teaching the Raging Sea Spear technique. He said he would follow the old rule and demonstrate it only once. The students watched as he performed the technique with a spear, swinging it sharply across the room. After finishing the move, the instructor narrowed his eyes and said that he was only demonstrating it once because he did not believe they could learn it. But Su Hong stood with a spear in his hand. Blue light wrapped around the weapon as he stepped forward. His expression stayed calm, and his sharp blue eyes focused ahead. In the next moment, a reflection appeared in his eye. The silhouette of the instructor performing the spear technique could be seen clearly inside his pupil. Then, after showing it once, the instructor threw his spear onto the wooden floor with a sharp impact. The instructor then walked toward the doorway with Li Yan. He looked back and said that how much the students learned now depended on themselves. As he left, the students complained loudly. They said that demonstrating it only once was unfair, and that the students in the back could not see anything clearly. But it was different for Su Hong. He lowered his gaze to the spear in his hand. Flames rose behind him as he remembered the explanation. The technique's core was that the spear moved like a flood dragon crossing the sea. With momentum like endless waves, Su Hong held the spear tightly as blue energy wrapped around his arms. His body lowered slightly, and his eyes focused with a calm and determined expression. His body moved. Blue currents flowed around him, while he twisted his stance and swung the spear with powerful force. He stepped forward, spinning the spear as the blue energy followed each movement. The watching students widened their eyes in shock, unable to believe what they were seeing. Some students shouted in surprise, saying that Su Hong seemed to have learned the technique. Others wondered what kind of martial arts prodigy he was, and questioned if they were too stupid to learn it. Hearing the commotion, purple-haired Li Yan rushed out, asking why they were making noise and who they thought had learned the technique. He came forward and saw Su Hong swing the spear again, his movements sharp and smooth as the blue energy trailed behind him. Li Yan watched silently, his expression turning serious. He admitted to himself that Su Hong seemed to have really learned it. He thought that he needed to test Su Hong further, wondering if he truly was a genius. As Su Hong stood with his spear lowered, Li Yan called out to him, saying he would give Su Hong some pointers. Su Hong listened quietly and answered, saying okay. Hearing that, everyone moved back. Leaving space in the center, Li Yan stepped forward and spun his spear with force. Seeing that, a student beside Su Hong warned him not to be impulsive. He said that Li Yan had a bad personality, but very high strength. Su Hong told him not to worry. Su Hong then stepped out. He lifted his spear and asked Li Yan to enlighten him. Li Yan's expression turned sharp. He swung his spear fiercely and shouted that Su Hong was arrogant. He asked Su Hong to watch as he used the Raging Sea Spear technique at the micro level, releasing waves of energy. Su Hong closed his eyes for a moment, then focused. Water-like energy swirled around his spear. In the next moment, his whole body moved like flowing waves. His spear technique became smooth and powerful. Blue energy burst out as Su Hong performed the Raging Sea Spear technique at the proficient level. His movement formed a huge water-like arc across the room. Li Yan stared in shock. He could not believe what he was seeing. He shouted in disbelief, saying it was impossible for Su Hong to reach the proficient level in the Raging Sea Spear technique. Su Hong swung his spear as blue energy wrapped around his arms. He used the Rage Sea Spear technique at proficient level. Water-like light spiraled around him as he stepped forward with sharp movements. The spears crashed with a heavy impact, sending shockwaves across the arena. Across from him, Li Yan was forced back by the collision. Shock flashed in his eyes as he watched the blue aura lash forward. He couldn't understand how Su Hong had reached the proficient level so quickly. He wasn't even a warrior yet his mastery had already grown at an unbelievable rate. Just then, Su Hong's eyes glowed gold for a moment, shining with intense determination. He pushed forward again, driving the spear straight toward Li Yan. A powerful impact exploded between them. Blue energy burst outward as Li Yan's spear was knocked back across the room. A glowing system message appeared in front of Su Hong, displaying that he had defeated a higher-level warrior. His martial Dao points increased by 35. Su Hong looked at the screen in shock, realizing that ordinary sparring matches also earned martial Dao points. He decided that he should spar with people more often. On the other hand, Li Yan fell to his knees, trembling as he stared at the floor. He muttered that it was impossible, absolutely impossible. He could not believe that Su Hong had trained the Rage Sea Spear technique to proficient level so quickly. His frustration rose, and he grew furious. He asked what would happen to him. He wondered what all his years of effort had meant. In the next moment, he shouted and rushed forward, swinging his fist toward Su Hong. He yelled, demanding to know what all his hard training had been for. But before the punch could land, a voice echoed, telling Li Yan to stop. Immediately, Li Yan's attack froze inches from Su Hong's face. The angry Li Yan turned his head and saw his teacher standing there. The teacher walked forward, slapped Li Yan, and scolded him. He said that if Li Yan could not even face defeat, then he was not worthy of being a martial artist. That slap struck Li Yan to his core, and his eyes widened in shock. The teacher looked at Li Yan's fallen spear in disbelief. He couldn't believe that just by watching his demonstration once, Su Hong had learned the Rage Sea Spear technique to proficient level. He admitted that even the geniuses from the imperial capital couldn't be this exaggerated. The teacher grabbed Li Yan by the head and bowed slightly towards Su Hong, thinking that Li Yan had talent but was far too arrogant, and that being beaten by someone like Su Hong was good for him. He apologized to Su Hong, saying it was his own failure for not disciplining his student properly. Su Hong watched silently and thought that this teacher had changed his attitude very quickly. Later that night, Su Hong walked alone down a quiet street. He felt that the day had worn him out, but he had gained a lot. As he looked at the glowing status window beside him, he noted that he had learned Thunder Rush Fist and the Rage Sea Spear technique, and had also earned martial Dao points. On the screen, his information appeared. Name, Su Hong. Blood energy, 91.7. Spirit, 23. Physique mortal body, 3%. Martial skills, Rage Sea Spear technique, subtle mastery, 28%. Thunder Rush Fist, perfect. Diamond Fist, grand achievement, 5%. Floating Light Palm, subtle mastery, 8%. Void Step, subtle mastery, 9%. Martial Dao points, 35 points. Su Hong fell deep in thought. He noted that the school exam was only a few days away, and students with money had already prepared high-grade alloy weapons. He thought that he needed to prepare his own weapon for the exam as well. He tested the feeling of the spear in his hand, and said that it felt comfortable. He thought that he might as well stick with using a spear from now on. He decided that he needed to buy an alloy spear, but remembering the price, he frowned. He admitted that his savings weren't even enough for his aunt's medical treatment, let alone buying an alloy weapon. Walking alone on the street, he wondered quietly what other ways he could make money. Just then, inside a convenience store, he overheard a broadcast. The announcement said that fierce beasts outside Star City were increasing every day, and the city lord was gathering warriors to hunt them. The rewards were described as generous. Hearing this, Su Hong looked up in surprise as an idea formed in his mind about leaving the city to hunt fierce beasts. Meanwhile, at Su Hong's house, his aunt stood behind his injured uncle, placing warm pads on his back as she scolded him. She asked why he was still working so hard when Su Hong had already given them money last time. His uncle, tired but firm, replied that Su Hong was still young, and they couldn't place all the household burdens on him. He said that as long as he could still work, he needed to save more for the kids. Just then, the door opened, and Su Hong stepped inside, calling out that he was home. Both his uncle and aunt turned in surprise before greeting him warmly. Su Hong walked over with a smile and offered to take over the chores. His aunt reminded him that they had told him to rest whenever he came home. Su Hong then turned to his uncle and gently placed a patch on his back. He told his uncle that he could earn money now and suggested that it would be better for him to stay home and take care of his aunt instead of working so hard. His uncle admitted that it sounded nice, but said he couldn't just sit still. With a confident grin and a thumbs up, he reassured Su Hong that he was only earning a bit for daily expenses and wouldn't push himself too hard. Su Hong's aunt smiled softly and told Su Hong that he would still need a lot of money for his martial arts training in the future. She said that both of them wanted to save as much as they could for him. Su Hong looked down at the hot patch in his hands and softly murmured to himself, calling out to his uncle and auntie. A determined look appeared in his eyes. He thought about how his uncle and auntie had always lived frugally. Unless he earned enough money to support them for a lifetime, they would never feel safe enough to retire and focus on their health. His expression hardened. He told himself that he absolutely could not miss the opportunity to hunt fierce beasts for the bounty. Sometime later, on his rooftop, Su Hong considered the idea of hunting down fierce beasts but remembered the dangers outside the city. The wilderness was unpredictable. To stay safe, he needed to raise his strength as much as possible. He decided to put all the martial Dao points he had earned into increasing his blood energy. That night, blue system panels appeared around him as he allocated his points. One by one, new notifications popped up, each showing his blood energy rising by small amounts. Eventually, a larger panel appeared before him, displaying that his blood energy was now 95.2. Su Hong sat cross-legged in a circle of burning red aura. Flames curled around his body as he checked his progress. He realized that he was now just one step away from becoming a warrior. 2 days later, at the school gymnasium late at night, Su Hong lay on the floor, drenched in sweat. System panels floated around him, displaying each of his martial skills: Rage Sea Spear Technique, Thunder Rush Fist, Diamond Fist, Floating Light Palm, and Void Step, all marked as perfect. After 2 full days of intense training, he had finally brought every martial skill to its peak. Breathing heavily, Su Hong stared upward. He told himself that all preparations were complete. It was finally time to leave the city. It was Saturday at the Star City Warrior base. Su Hong finally arrived and muttered that the place was really far away. As he walked through the gates, he looked around with curiosity. He thought that although he had seen the base many times on TV, this was his first time visiting it in person. Inside, he noticed warriors everywhere. Warriors who were rarely seen in daily life appeared all around him in the bustling streets. He opened a sheet of paper and read the bounty list silently. Unranked fierce beasts were worth 300 blue star coins each. Tier 1 lower stage fierce beasts were worth 1,000. Tier 1 middle stage fierce beasts were worth 3,000. Then he reached the line mentioning Tier 2 lower stage fierce beasts. Another line in the rules stated that after killing a fierce beast, its left ear must be cut off as proof. Without that, no payment would be issued. He stared at the rule with an awkward expression and wondered why it was so primitive. Nearby, a warrior walked up to the payment window and placed a bag on the counter. He asked the clerk to calculate how much everything inside was worth. Watching him, Su Hong thought that the bag must be filled with the left ears of fierce beasts. Just then, a loud shout echoed through the area as a group of people pushed forward. Someone at the front yelled for everyone to move aside. Su Hong turned his head and saw a group approaching. Among them was a blond young man walking confidently, while others cleared the path for him. One of the men shouted that young Master Ye was coming. As Su Hong observed, he quietly noted that the blond man's outfit and attitude looked similar to White Fox from the underground arena. Nearby, a few warriors whispered among themselves. One of them complained that the blond man was always showing off, saying that if his uncle were not the base director, he would have been beaten up long ago. Another person added that the blond man had already been beaten by someone a few days earlier, and it had been satisfying to watch. A third person responded that this explained why he hadn't been seen recently. Hearing that, Su Hong looked back. The blond young man passed by and glanced in his direction. The large masked warrior beside him also turned slightly. The blond man wore a faint smile on his face as he looked toward Su Hong. Su Hong stood silently, his expression calm as he looked ahead. He thought to himself that the danger did not only come from fierce beasts, but also from humans. Because of that, he reminded himself that he needed to be extremely careful. As he walked through the warrior base, someone approached him and asked if it was his first time there and if he was planning to enter the wilderness alone. He answered quietly that he was. The staff member watched him walk further into the passage and sighed, thinking that he was just another ignorant and fearless kid. Su Hong took another step forward, his shoe pressing down on the grass as he exited the tunnel. A bright light shone ahead. He stepped out of the dark passage and into the wilderness, where tall trees stretched out in every direction and sunlight spilled through the leaves above him. Su Hong stood with determination in his eyes. He tightened his grip on his sleeve and thought to himself that he must return with a full haul. 2 hours later, the forest around him was quiet. Sunlight filtered through the leaves as he walked deeper among the trees. He looked around and realized that he had not seen a single fierce beast. He wondered if all the beasts near the forest outskirts had already been hunted. He leaned against a tree with confusion on his face, holding his water bottle. Question marks hovered above him as he tried to figure out the situation. A moment later, he decided to head further inside. His body shot forward in a leap, speeding deeper into the forest. Su Hong rushed forward through the forest, his breathing sharp as the wind whipped past his face. Sweat formed along his cheek as he heard a sound ahead of him. A moment later, a white wolf, with glowing red eyes, burst through the trees. The beast lowered its body and growled, its claws digging into the dirt as it prepared to attack. Su Hong stopped and faced it cautiously. He looked at the creature and recognized it. According to his textbooks, this was a Tier 1 lower stage fierce beast, the Shadow Moonwolf. He thought to himself that this was the first time he had ever seen a living one. The wolf suddenly roared loudly, saliva flying from its jaws as it lunged toward him with its fangs bared. Su Hong tightened his stance as the beast leapt at him. Its crimson eyes locked onto him while it howled. The attack came down from above, straight toward Su Hong. Su Hong stood still as the fierce beast lunged at him with its claws extended. The wolf's red eyes glowed with killing intent as it swung its massive paw toward him. The wolf's attack cut through the air, but Su Hong dodged it by leaning back. The beast missed its strike. Lightning gathered around Su Hong's fist. His hand glowed with bright golden energy as he clenched it tightly. He stepped forward and struck the wolf with a powerful blow. Lightning exploded across the wolf's body as the impact sent it flying backward. The wolf crashed into a tree, rolling across the forest floor while letting out a weak howl. Su Hong then stood over the fallen beast. Lightning still flickered around his arm as he looked down at the defeated wolf lying motionless on the ground. Su Hong then looked at his trembling hand with bright eyes. He wondered if this was what fighting monsters felt like. It was even more exciting than he had imagined. His fingers shook as he remembered the battle. The feeling made his heart race. He clenched his fist with confidence. He thought to himself that he could now kill a Tier 1 initial stage ferocious beast in a single move. He wondered how he would perform against a Tier 1 middle stage ferocious beast. While he was thinking that, 2 glowing red eyes appeared quietly in the forest behind him. The next second, a huge figure stepped out. The scene revealed a Tier 1 middle stage ferocious beast, a raging black bear. The bear roared from behind him as Su Hong stood calmly with his fist raised. A powerful strike flashed across the darkness. In the next moment, the raging black bear collapsed with its eyes rolled back, beaten in a single blow. Standing over the fallen beast, lightning still flickered around Su Hong's arm. He thought that with his current strength, as long as he didn't provoke a Tier 2 beast, he wouldn't face too much danger. Finally, he crouched beside the defeated bear with a smile. He held up the bear's ear and thought proudly that 3,000 prize money was secured. A blue system window appeared in front of him. It displayed a reminder saying that his accumulated martial value was now enough for him to break through into a martial artist, and he should upgrade as soon as possible. Su Hong looked at the screen with excitement. He thought that he could finally break through and become a martial artist. But suddenly, he felt a very powerful aura behind him, shocking Su Hong completely. He turned quickly, sweat covering his face. He looked toward the forest and sensed the pressure coming from afar. He thought that the aura was extremely intense and wondered what kind of ferocious beast it was. He decided to go take a look and rushed through the forest at high speed. He landed on top of a large rock and looked down. His eyes widened in shock as he whispered that this was. Before him stood a massive creature, A glowing description appeared, explaining that it was a Tier 1 late-stage ferocious beast, black jade giant python. Below, 2 men were fighting the python with their weapons. The python struck them with its giant tail. The men used their shields to block, but the python's power was too much, making them spit out blood with just one attack. The python's massive tail smashed into both of them, sending them flying backward. Their bodies slammed into a rocky wall, breaking the stones on impact. From a distance, Su Hong watched the scene with widened eyes. Suddenly, shock flashed across his face as he stared ahead. The python lunged again. It swung its tail with incredible force, aiming straight at Su Hong. The ground cracked apart as the huge tail cut through the air. The beast's body twisted sharply. Its tail curved like a giant whip, moving faster than Su Hong expected. He gritted his teeth, thinking it was too fast, as the python's attack came crashing down. The giant python's body smashed into Su Hong, sending him sliding across the dirt as dust exploded everywhere. Nearby, dark blood splattered across the stone. A weak voice coughed again and again, the sound mixed with the shaking of the earth. Su Hong knelt down, covering his mouth as he coughed blood. In front of him, another man lay motionless, his body torn open and stained black with blood. He wiped the blood from his lips with the back of his hand. His expression stayed calm even though pain filled his body. Reaching forward, he grabbed the fallen man's spear and lifted it from the ground. He quietly said that he would borrow it for a moment. Then he stood up again and faced the enormous python. The python rose high into the sky, its golden eyes glowing fiercely. Wind whipped around them as it hissed loudly, towering over him. Su Hong held the spear tightly and stepped forward to face the beast. The giant python opened its jaws wide and rushed forward with a roar, its sharp fangs flashing as it dove down like a falling mountain. Su Hong dodged aside just in time. The creature's massive body slammed into the ground, sending rocks flying everywhere. In that moment, Su Hong quietly recalled something. Normally, killing a Tier 1 late-stage ferocious beast required several martial artists working together. But he was different. All of his martial skills had already reached perfection. With that level of mastery, he had easily killed the Tier 1 middle-stage raging black bear before. Because of that, he believed he now had the strength to fight the black jade giant python directly. He dashed forward with incredible speed, his footsteps leaving white streaks behind him. His body spun through the air, avoiding another strike as the python whipped its tail. Using void step. Perfect. He closed the distance in a blink. The massive python lunged again, jaws wide. But Su Hong's eyes stayed calm. Blue light burst around his spear as water-like energy gathered and wrapped around the weapon. He raised the spear and unleashed his technique, Raging Sea Spear technique. Perfect. A powerful wave of blue energy burst forward as his spear swung down, carrying the force of crashing tides straight at the python. The giant python's massive body twisted violently as the golden spearhead pierced deep into its scales. The impact sent shockwaves through the air, and the beast let out a furious roar. Its jaws opened wide in pain, revealing rows of sharp fangs. Su Hong moved swiftly, stepping across the python's body with quick, precise motions. Each step left a sharp mark on the ground as he moved toward the spear. His hand tightened around it, gripping it firmly while power surged along his arm. Blue energy swirled around him, wrapping his entire body in a flowing, water-like aura. He lowered his stance, spear ready, eyes sharp and focused. With determination burning in his expression, he whispered to himself that he would strike again, one more time. With full power, he threw his spear at the massive python. The weapon shot forward like a beam of light. The giant python whipped its massive body forward, but the blue energy slash cut straight through its attack. Su Hong's spear pierced the python's body as it roared in pain. Enraged, the giant python swung its massive tail to attack, but Su Hong moved at extreme speed, circling around the creature again and again as faint blue trails followed behind him. He thought that the difference in their size was too great. Landing a fatal blow in a single strike would be difficult. He decided he had to weaken the python as much as possible first, then wait for the right chance to finish it. Just then, the python's tail swept toward him. Seeing this, Su Hong raised his fist, and a surge of bright energy formed around it. He used his Thunder Rush fist, perfect technique, as his entire arm shone with crackling power. He launched himself forward, delivering a powerful strike that sent waves of lightning bursting across the battlefield. The ground shook as the giant python's tail whipped across the battlefield. After landing a successful strike, Su Hong quickly leapt back, widening the distance between himself and the massive creature. Dust rose behind him with each step as he prepared his spear again. He reminded himself that after every attack, he needed to back away fast. Only by keeping his distance could he avoid being crushed by the python's huge body. The python twisted angrily, its scales scraping against the ground. Su Hong stayed alert. He told himself to wait for an opening, attack again, and then retreat right away before the monster countered. The constant movement tired him. His breath grew heavy, and sweat rolled down his face. Still, he knew this method kept him safe. He exhaled as he steadied his stance. Across from him, the python trembled. Its growls grew weaker. It seemed to be nearing its limit too. Seeing this, Su Hong realized he only needed to circle it a few more times and strike carefully to bring it down. He gripped his spear and called out in determination, ready for another round. But just as he prepared to move, something caught his attention. A sudden sound behind him. Su Hong sharply turned his head, his eyes widening as he sensed something approaching. He demanded to know who it was. A large masked man suddenly leapt toward him from above, laughing loudly with a flaming fist raised. Su Hong quickly lifted his arm to block, gritting his teeth as the flaming punch crashed down on him. The force of the attack sent him flying across the ground, rolling until he came to a stop. He pushed himself up with difficulty, coughing as he tried to regain his breath. When he looked up, several figures were standing in front of him. He shouted, asking who they were. The man in the long coat stepped forward, surrounded by his group. It was the White Fox. He looked down at Su Hong with a confident smile and told him that they were meeting again. He then asked Su Hong to hand over the black jade giant python. The group of 5 stood together on the rocky path, watching the injured Su Hong kneel in exhaustion. His spear lay stuck in the ground beside him, its blade cracked from the earlier battle. White Fox stepped forward with a calm smile. His eyes narrowed slightly as he recalled the moment he saw Su Hong leaving the city alone. He said that when he first witnessed that reckless decision, he was certain Su Hong would die somewhere outside the city walls. He spoke again, amused. He admitted he never expected Su Hong's luck to be so strong. Not only had he survived, but he had even managed to encounter a critically wounded black jade giant python, one that was already on the verge of death. Hearing that, Su Hong stared at him quietly, realizing that if they thought he had merely found the python, that meant these 5 had just arrived. He observed them carefully. All 5 were martial artists. He realized that they had the numbers advantage. Fighting them head-on was impossible. Suddenly, the large masked fighter stepped forward aggressively. He shouted at Su Hong, asking if he hadn't heard young Master Ye's words. He demanded to know why Su Hong was still standing there when young Master Ye wanted the giant python for himself. Hearing that, Su Hong lowered his head slightly. His fists clenched. His jaw tightened. He said nothing, but his body trembled with anger. Su Hong glared forward, electricity crackling around his fist as he spoke. He said that they had only pushed him back earlier because of a sneak attack, and he asked if they really thought he couldn't defeat them. In the next moment, he shot forward and slammed his glowing fist into the masked brute's punch. The impact exploded outward, sending the large man flying. The brute's eyes widened behind his mask as he felt the force of the blow. Shock filled him as he thought about the terrifying power striking him. Su Hong didn't stop. He rushed in again, his fist flashing with red light, and struck the brute hard enough to knock him into the ground. The remaining group stood in the distance, watching their fallen companion lying in the grass. None of them moved. Then White Fox stepped forward slightly, looking at the scene with interest. With a slight smile, he commented on the attack. He said it was an excellent Vajra fist, and confirmed that Su Hong was indeed the Minotaur. Hearing that, Su Hong turned his head sharply, his expression tightening when he confirmed that it really was the White Fox mask. White Fox stood calmly, with his hand covering part of his face. His voice was smooth as he spoke. He said that Su Hong was the first person to humiliate him in front of so many people. He then dropped his hand and gave an order. His voice was cold as he commanded his subordinates to kill Su Hong. All 4 men around him rushed forward at once. Their weapons drew streaks across the ground as they charged towards Su Hong. Su Hong reacted instantly. His hand tightened around the spear, and his body shot upward in a single motion. Behind him, White Fox's group shouted to chase him. They sprinted after him as he leapt away from the rocky cliff. Deeper in the forest, the group slowed down, scanning their surroundings. Dense trees and scattered sunlight surrounded them as they searched the area. One of them shouted, asking where he went. Another warned that the woods ahead were thick and easy to ambush in, telling everyone to stay alert. The masked man with brown hair looked ahead as he walked through the forest. He scoffed and said there were so many of them, wondering if they were really afraid of just one man. Just as he said that, suddenly, a blur shot past him. Su Hong moved at incredible speed. The masked man's eyes widened as Su Hong dashed forward. Su Hong's eyes glowed with a sharp blue light as he closed the distance. In the next moment, he struck. The masked man was smashed into the ground with overwhelming force. From Su Hong's punch, 9 continuous sounds echoed in the air. Blood splattered across the man's mask as he lay motionless on the forest floor. Farther back, White Fox watched in shock. Sweat slid down his face as he stared at the settling dust clouds left behind by Su Hong. He cursed under his breath, unable to hide his disbelief. He wondered how Su Hong could possibly be this fast. White Fox's remaining 3 men stood together. One of them suddenly shouted in shock. He told young Master Ye that the technique being used by Su Hong was the Thunderclap Fist, specifically the 9 Echo Thunderclap Fist. He added that even rank 3 martial artists couldn't train the Thunderclap Fist to perfection. Hearing that, White Fox's expression twisted in frustration. He snapped at them to shut up. Sweat slid down his cheek as he stared ahead in disbelief. He couldn't understand how Su Hong had perfection in the Vairara Fist, and now perfection in the Thunderclap Fist. He questioned how any of this was even possible. Up in the trees, Su Hong watched them from above, staying calm as he observed the group below. He quietly thought to himself that if he hadn't just fought the giant python and consumed so much vitality, he could have crushed all 3 of them head-on. Since he couldn't confront them directly now, he decided on a different approach. He decided that he would have to defeat them one by waiting for the right moments. Thinking that, he threw his spear, but he didn't attack them directly. He threw his spear onto the ground right behind White Fox's group. It was meant to distract their attention, and it worked. As everyone turned to look at the spear, Su Hong made his move. Before White Fox's men could react, Su Hong appeared right in front of one of them. Blue light flashed in his eyes as he reached forward with a swift, precise motion. The man facing him froze, shock spreading across his expression as he realized he had been targeted. Su Hong kicked the man in the face. His strike landed with explosive force, sending blood scattering as the man's head snapped back violently. The impact launched the man's body into the air before it crashed onto the ground. Nearby, the remaining attackers turned in shock. One of them stared at the fallen body with fear spreading across his face, while another looked nervously toward his leader. One man shouted that Su Hong was too strong and urged White Fox to retreat, but White Fox refused. He glared ahead and demanded whether they were joking, insisting that he would kill the boy today. A blur of motion cut through the forest as Su Hong dashed between the trees. His speed left streaks of blue light trailing behind him. The attackers could barely react as Su Hong appeared again and rushed straight toward them. In the next moment, another attacker was struck so hard that his body flipped upward and slammed into the ground, shaking the forest floor. White Fox clenched his teeth in frustration. Sweat slid down his face as he stared ahead. He cursed under his breath, wondering how Su Hong had grown so much stronger in just a few days. Just then, a blur shot past him. Su Hong rushed forward with incredible speed, closing in from behind. White Fox immediately spun around, eyes wide, but Su Hong was already gone. Leaves scattered in every direction as the ground shook from his steps. White Fox shouted in anger, repeating his frustration again and again. In the next moment, Su Hong appeared behind White Fox again, saying it was finally his turn. But little did he know, White Fox had already detected him. White Fox immediately turned and raised his arm, blue light gathering around it. Energy sparks shot outward as he charged forward, shouting and telling Su Hong not to think he had already won. White Fox thrust his glowing finger upward, shouting the name of his technique, Void-Shattering Finger. Seeing that, Su Hong raised his spear to attack, but his senses warned him that it was dangerous. He bent down and dodged as the blue arc of energy sliced across the forest with incredible force. The blast struck a nearby tree, instantly blowing a massive hole through its trunk. Bark and dirt exploded outward as the tree shook from the impact. The entire tree burst apart, collapsing under the force of the attack. Across the forest, White Fox thrust both hands forward, using the same void-shattering finger technique again and again. Blue beams shot from his glowing fingers in every direction, filling the air with intersecting streaks of light. Su Hong jumped around the forest, dodging all of it. He watched White Fox with a sharp gaze. Sweat slid down his cheek as he assessed the attack's power. He noted that the martial skill wasn't weak, its level seemed high, possibly Class B. Then White Fox glared back with rage twisting across his face. He screamed that he had memorized Su Hong's face. He shouted that if he was injured today, he would kill Su Hong's entire family once he returned. This was White Fox's biggest mistake. Hearing the threat, Su Hong's expression darkened instantly. Blue light flashed across his eyes as White Fox's words rang in his mind. Su Hong sprinted through the forest. He zigzagged through the trees, leaving trails of destruction in his path. Ahead of him, White Fox glared nervously. He held up his glowing finger and shouted that his uncle was a supervisor at the martial artist base, and that his father held even higher status. But before he could finish, Su Hong appeared behind him. White Fox's eyes widened with fear as he sensed him closing in. Su Hong appeared behind him with lightning-like speed. Red light crackled around his fist as he spoke calmly, saying he preferred White Fox when he was acting arrogant a moment ago. His punch connected instantly. White Fox's face twisted as the blow sent him flying, blood spraying from the impact. Su Hong didn't stop. With one more sweeping attack, a red arc cut across the air and smashed into White Fox again, throwing him violently backward as his body spun out of control. White Fox was sent flying out of the forest. He fell from the cliffside and hit the ground with a violent impact, sending dust exploding into the air. Thick clouds of smoke rolled across the rocky ground. Through the haze, White Fox slowly pushed himself up. He coughed and panted heavily as the smoke began to clear. Su Hong, surrounded by a red aura, walked out of the shadows. His eyes were dark and cold. He looked straight at White Fox and said that he should never have used his family as a threat. Blood covered White Fox's face and clothes as he struggled to lift his head. He asked why Su Hong was so strong, and said it shouldn't be possible. He panted weakly and stared in disbelief, saying the other wasn't even a martial artist. White Fox screamed, asking Su Hong what he actually was. Just then, behind him, a massive black python rose from the ground, its eyes glowing and its tongue dripping blood. Terrified, White Fox's eyes widened as he turned around after sensing the black python. Just then, the black python slammed its tail onto the ground with tremendous force, cracking the earth. Seeing that, Su Hong got ready to face the giant python directly, gripping his spear. He said he had spent too much time fighting the others. As the monstrous snake coiled and lifted its head, he realized it had already regained its stamina. On the other hand, White Fox's 3 men whom Su Hong had knocked out before stood in the forest, shaken and confused. One of them muttered that Su Hong, whom they had fought, was far too strange. Another looked around anxiously and wondered where young Master Ye had gone, asking if he had already finished off Su Hong. Suddenly, the man in the red jacket lifted his head, alerted by a sound. Before they could react, they saw Su Hong running toward them from behind. He sprinted straight at them with his spear in hand. One of the men shouted that he would not spare him, while another yelled that Su Hong had finally come out, but Su Hong ordered them to move out of the way. Just as he said that, a loud rumble burst from behind. All 3 men froze when a massive python erupted from the ground, lunging toward them. Their eyes widened in shock. As the python crashed forward, Su Hong dodged aside, causing the giant creature to slam into the 2 martial artists. One of them screamed as the monster struck. A notification appeared, stating that Su Hong had indirectly killed an opponent martial artist and earned 30 martial value. A moment later, the python whipped around again, knocking the man in red into a tree. The notice appeared once more, another indirect kill, another 30 martial value. Su Hong stared at the scene in surprise. He hadn't expected to gain martial value this way too, but suddenly, the giant python's tail swung across the ground and came toward him. Seeing this, Su Hong was alerted, a bead of sweat sliding down his face as he reacted to the sudden movement behind him. He thought to himself that after so many battles, his martial value was finally enough for him to break through and become a martial artist. With a powerful leap, he spun into the air. He moved with lightning speed, jumping from tree to tree, until he made a large distance between himself and the python. He wished he could find a safe place to break through. His eyes sharpened when he spotted a cave in the distance, deciding that he would choose that spot. He shot straight down toward the cave entrance as the serpent followed. As he entered, the massive python crashed into the cave entrance, sending dust and rocks exploding upward upon impact. In the dim cave, Su Hong landed on one knee with his spear pressed against the ground. Dust and rocks fell around him as the giant serpent crashed down, its glowing eyes locked onto him. The python lurched forward, its jaws opening wide as it dove straight at him with a violent roar. But it couldn't enter. Inside the cave, Su Hong quickly pulled up his system status screen, while the serpent's body thrashed behind him. The python roared again as the system interface displayed Su Hong's information. Name: Su Hong, Vitality 96, Spirit 23, Physique, mortal body 3%. Martial skills, raging sea spear technique, perfect thunder rush fist, perfect vajra fist, perfect floating light palm, perfect void step. His martial value showed 504. Su Hong furiously tapped the vitality stat on his screen, shouting for it to increase faster. Numbers flashed rapidly as vitality rose by plus 0.1 again and again. A burning red aura erupted around him. Vitality surged through his body, making his entire frame tremble from the heat. Red light wrapped around him like flames as he gritted his teeth, thinking that it felt as if magma was flowing through his veins. The status screen flashed again, displaying that vitality had reached 100. Red energy burst outward. Seeing this, the serpent stopped, its eyes widening as a wave of crimson power surged across the cave. A red notification appeared above Su Hong, announcing his breakthrough and that he had become a Tier 1 martial artist. Flames of power burst around him as he stood in the center of the glowing circle. He looked at his own body, feeling the heat rising from within, and said that he had finally become a real martial artist. His fist tightened, energy crackling around it as bright light wrapped around his arm. In front of him, the giant serpent shrank back in fear, sensing the change in his strength. Su Hong stepped forward, flames burning around his body, and told the serpent that it was now his turn. His eyes sharpened, and with a swift motion, he launched himself forward. His glowing fist shot straight ahead, tearing through the air like a beam of light. The python was using its whole body to crawl out of the cave, but a loud impact echoed when Su Hong's punch struck the serpent's body. The python let out a furious roar as golden energy surged upward, launching the python high into the sky. The giant serpent's face filled the panel. Its scales cracked, and its fangs stained with blood. It let out a fierce hiss as fresh wounds covered its jaw. Su Hong charged forward with glowing eyes and a blazing fist. Energy sparked around his arm as he shouted the name of his technique, Vajra Fist. He leaped through the air, aiming straight at the serpent's open mouth. The enormous snake lunged upward, roaring as it extended its tail to attack Su Hong from behind. Su Hong met its tail attack head-on, blocking it with his burning fist. Red lightning surged around him as the impact exploded against the serpent's tail. Su Hong gritted his teeth. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth as he pulled back his arm. He tightened his grip on his spear and steadied himself. He then drove his spear downward with full strength. Blue energy burst outward as he slammed the attack straight into the serpent's stomach, forcing the massive creature down with overwhelming force. A blinding column of blue energy crashed down the python's body onto the ground. Lightning burst outward on impact, making the creature roar in shock and pain. From high above, Su Hong descended with flames wrapped around his arm. His fist burned like molten fire as he shouted the name of his technique, Thunder Rush Fist. He dove straight toward the thrashing serpent. Su Hong's fiery punch slammed into the creature's skull, sending waves of sound force rippling through the air. The impact echoed through the forest. The serpent's head recoiled violently, as golden lightning swallowed it. Su Hong's attack smashed it downward, driving its head deep into the ground. The earth cracked beneath the blow, and the forest shook from the impact. Smoke and dust rolled across the battlefield in thick waves. When the dust slowly cleared, Su Hong stood firmly on top of the python's massive head. His red aura flickered as he looked down at the defeated beast. He noted that although the giant python had already been heavily injured, he was now strong enough to withstand its attacks directly. A glowing panel appeared beside him, confirming that his martial value had increased by 94. The enormous serpent lay motionless beneath him. Its threat finally ended. Su Hong then sat on top of the giant python's severed head, holding a knife in his hand. As he looked at the huge corpse beneath him, he muttered that hunting ferocious beasts normally required cutting off their left ear to exchange for money. But then he paused. The thought trailed off into silence as he stared at the massive serpent. Snakes didn't have ears. He wondered helplessly what he was supposed to do in this situation. After a moment, he sighed and stood up. He said it was better to forget it and head back quickly. The scene shifted to a distant view of the cliffside where he had first fought that massive python and white fox. His footsteps echoed softly as he approached someone lying bloodied on the ground. It was White Fox, but he was already dead after being crushed by the giant python's tail. Su Hong looked down at him calmly. He said that ending up like this, White Fox had gotten off easy. Su Hong then crouched beside the fallen body and began searching through his belongings. While checking his pockets, he wondered if he might find the high-level martial technique White Fox had used earlier. His hand paused when he pulled out a small booklet. The cover was worn, but the words were clear. He read the title out loud, Void Breaking Finger. Later that night, As the massive corpse of the giant python rested motionless, something shone nearby. It was a small fire flickering inside a cave, whose entrance was covered by a wall of stone. Inside the cave, the warm glow of the fire lit up the rocks. Su Hong sat cross-legged with the void-breaking finger manual open on the ground. He calmly stated that he had already memorized the entire introductory method of the void-breaking finger, and the next step was to use the system to master it quickly. Soon, the surroundings shifted into a dark, digital-like space. Su Hong sat in the center and called out for the system to begin. In front of him, a glowing blue projection of himself slowly appeared. Training began instantly. Light beams surged around him, and a sharp force shot past his body as he practiced. He narrowed his eyes and continued. One by one, streaks of blue energy burst from his fingertips as he repeatedly used the void-breaking finger. His voice echoed as he shouted the name of the technique. System panels floated beside him, showing the mastery level rising rapidly, 51%, 63%, and 93%. Blue light filled the entire space as he continued to train, pushing the technique closer and closer. Suddenly, a faint blue screen flashed before Su Hong's eyes, showing a message that void-breaking finger had reached the basic stage. But before Su Hong could celebrate, a sharp beam of blue light shot into his forehead, causing his body to tremble. His eyes widened in shock. He coughed weakly, holding his chest as he returned to reality. He looked at the manual in his hand and thought that, as expected of a B-rank martial skill, even reaching the basic level put heavy pressure on him. While catching his breath, he decided he needed to find a monster to test the technique's power. 3 days later, deep in the forest, a massive bear with glowing red eyes burst through the trees. The beast roared furiously as it charged forward. Just then, Su Hong stepped in, raising his arm. Blue energy gathered at his fingertip. As he released his attack, he unleashed the void-breaking finger, sending a piercing beam of energy straight into the bear monster. The bear was struck violently, its body shaking under the force of the blow. Su Hong stood calmly with blue energy swirling around his finger. He realized he had finally reached the perfect realm of the technique. He felt satisfied, thinking that its power was truly worthy of a B-rank martial skill. Just then, a glowing notification appeared, displaying that he had mastered void-breaking finger to perfect void-breaking finger. With the skill perfected, he lowered his hand and said that it was time to go back. The scene shifted to a large fortified compound, the martial artist base, where countless martial artists were gathered within the wide courtyard. The martial artist base was lively that day. At the exchange counter, a startled clerk counted the rewards and announced loudly that the total came to 230,000. The surrounding hunters murmured in surprise. One of them praised the Thunder Squad, saying they were incredibly fierce for killing so many beasts. Another muttered that this single harvest equaled several months of his own hard work. Just then, a little distance away, new voices rose in excitement. Hunters pointed out that this guy didn't bring back a single non-ranked beast. Every corpse he carried was a Tier 1 ferocious beast, and some were even high-stage ones. Those voices attracted the Thunder Squad's attention. Those voices were for Su Hong. He stepped forward with a large bundle. The clerk checked the records and read out the numbers in disbelief. 72 initial stage beasts, 83 middle stage beasts, and 17 high stage beasts. The total reward reached 406,000 blue star coins. The hunters nearby stared at him in shock. Su Hong lowered his gaze slightly, sweat forming at his temple. He wondered if he had hunted too many beasts and become too noticeable. If he had known this would draw so much attention, he thought he should have killed fewer. Just then, loud noises echoed through the base. A burst of force shattered part of the plaza, catching everyone's attention. Hunters gathered and stared at the destroyed area. People shouted in confusion. Someone asked how the base could be attacked. Another questioned how this was possible when so many high-level martial artists were stationed there. Su Hong stepped forward among the crowd, gripping his spear as he looked toward the smoke rising from the damaged building. From the smoke, a pale hand pressed against the ground, a faint glint of light reflecting off several metal rings wrapped around its fingers. A man in a suit stepped forward from the smoke-filled ruins of the base. His expression twisted with fury as he shouted for the base to be sealed, ordering that not even a single fly be allowed to escape. This man was Ye Qi, the person in charge of the base, and White Fox Ye Feng's uncle. His subordinates responded instantly, shouting their acknowledgement. Seeing this, another supervisor hurried toward him, panic visible on his face. He asked Ye Qi what had happened. Ye Qi's eyes burned red with rage as he answered. He shouted that his nephew Ye Feng, along with the 4 martial artists accompanying him, were all dead. News of the death spread quickly among the crowd. Several martial artists whispered in shock, wondering how Ye Feng could possibly have been killed and how an entire group of 5 could be wiped out at once. Some people muttered bitterly. One man thought that if not for Ye Feng's background, he would have killed him long ago. Another person said that everyone there had been robbed by Ye Feng before. More voices joined, saying the scourge had finally been eliminated. Hidden among the crowd, Su Hong stood silently, listening to their reactions as the discussions grew louder around him. Ye Qi walked forward, announcing in a stern voice that a B-rank martial skill found on Ye Feng's body was missing. He declared that all martial artists had to be body searched and cleared of suspicion before they were allowed to leave. Amid the tense crowd, Su Hong stood quietly with his spear. He observed the situation calmly. As he listened, he thought to himself that based on the corpses, it was obvious White Fox had been killed by the giant python, so the incident should not be traced back to him. From across the open plaza, the officials and Ye Qi gathered in a group. Their eyes scanned the crowd in suspicion. Su Hong noticed their focused stares drifting toward him. He wondered silently if they were targeting him. Suddenly, the people around him slowly stepped back, creating a clear path as the officials walked forward, led by Supervisor Ye. Their footsteps echoed as they approached directly towards Su Hong. Then Ye Qi, with a dark expression, stepped out from the group. His eyes glowed coldly as he spoke with a forced smile, addressing Su Hong as little brother. He said he had heard that Su Hong alone had killed ferocious beasts worth 400,000, and he claimed that Su Hong's skills were truly amazing. Ye Qi looked down at Su Hong and said he had heard that Su Hong had killed a ferocious beast worth 400,000 credits on his own. He called it impressive. A woman nearby stared at Su Bai suspiciously. She said he looked like a rank 1 early-stage fighter at best and questioned how he could possibly kill so many beasts. She insisted that he must have scavenged young Master Yi's belongings and ordered the guards to search him immediately. 2 suited enforcers stepped forward, flames burning around their arms. One of them warned Su Bai not to resist, saying things would get ugly if he did. But before they could touch him, Su Hong moved. In an instant, his spear was at one guard's face. The guard froze in shock. He asked Su Hong what he was doing. The guard was stunned because he couldn't even follow how fast the spear had been drawn. Su Hong then asked calmly if they truly wanted to search him. He reminded them that he was a student of Star City High No. 1. Hearing that, Investigator Ye Qi narrowed his eyes as he thought about the situation. He knew the principal of No. 1 High was fiercely protective of his students, someone no one wanted to provoke. But to him, Su Hong still seemed extremely suspicious. He walked forward with 2 guards beside him. He thought that if Su Hong truly hunted all those beasts by himself, then he was a genius, and if they accused the wrong person and offended him, it would become a big problem. Facing Su Hong directly, Ye Qi explained that his nephew had been attacked and their family's secret technique had been stolen. He said he needed to find the culprit and hoped Su Hong would cooperate. Su Hong replied calmly, saying he only hoped they weren't accusing the wrong person. Seeing Su Hong's attitude, Ye Qi got angry, but he offered 10,000 credits as compensation for the search. Su Hong raised his hand and countered with 30,000. In his mind, he reasoned that Ye Feng had been killed by a giant python, and as long as the technique wasn't found on him, they couldn't blame him. After thinking for a moment, Ye Qi agreed. He told the guards to search. Su Hong lifted his arms slightly and told them to check carefully, saying he didn't want any false accusations. The guards began searching through his belongings, while the woman searched his bag. Ye Qi and the others watched closely. One of the guards finished checking and reported that there was nothing on Su Hong. Hearing this, Ye Qi told his subordinates to give Su Hong the 30,000 credits and let him go. Hearing that, Su Hong let out a small sigh of relief. In his mind, he felt lucky that he had cleaned everything up earlier. Otherwise, he would have been in serious trouble today. As he walked away with his spear, Ye Qi, who was in charge, ordered the others to continue searching everyone. No one was allowed to leave until they were cleared of all suspicion. Su Hong left, thinking about his next steps. He planned to shower and change clothes first. After that, he wanted to go to the Martial Artists Association to register for the assessment. He needed to get a guidance technique as soon as possible. Later, he arrived at an underground hotel inside the martial artist base. Inside a quiet and bright room, he sat shirtless on the bed, with his status window open in front of him. He checked his stats and was surprised. He had accumulated 534 martial points. He realized he had been so focused on training the void-shattering finger and hunting beasts these past few days that he hadn't used any of his points. His status panel showed name, Su Hong, vitality, spirit, 23, and physique, mortal frame at 6%. His martial arts were void-shattering finger at perfection, raging sea spear technique at perfection, thunderclap fist at perfection, vajra fist at perfection, floating light palm at perfection, and void step also at perfection. He also had 534 martial points. Su Hong remembered that a rank 1 early-stage martial artist usually had about 100 vitality, while a rank 1 mid-stage martial artist had around 200 vitality. He calculated quietly. If he used all his martial points on vitality, he could raise his vitality by 53.4 points, making him only about 40 points short of reaching mid-stage. He sat there, thinking carefully about what to upgrade next. He looked at his other stats and thought to himself that he still hadn't upgraded his spirit or mortal frame yet. He wondered what effects they might have. His screen displayed that he had 23 spirit and his physique, mortal frame was at 6%. He told himself that he had plenty of martial points anyway, so he decided to test it and see what would happen. He put some points into his spirit. Blue upgrade messages floated around him saying spirit increased by 0.1 again and again. As the light faded, he looked at his hands and admitted that he didn't feel much different after raising his spirit. Then he shifted his focus and began upgrading his mortal frame instead. Bright blue energy burst around him as new messages appeared. Mortal frame increased by 0.1, over and over. This time, he felt the strength increase clearly. He nodded to himself and decided to add even more. His status window updated again, showing that his spirit was now 26.5 and his physique mortal frame was at 36.1%. His martial arts list stayed the same: void-shattering finger, raging sea spear technique, thunderclap fist, vajra fist, floating light palm, and void step, all at perfection level. His martial points dropped to 0. He looked at his window and decided that his mortal frame level was enough for now. He planned to put 200 martial points into vitality next and the rest into spirit. A new wave of glowing panels swirled around him. Vitality increased by 0.1, filling the air, followed by more upgrades pouring into spirit. Suddenly, red energy exploded from his body. Su Hong clenched his fists as power surged through him. It felt as if an endless supply of strength was rising from deep inside, overflowing with unstoppable force. His body became very muscular. As the intense red aura around him faded, Su Hong's body slowly returned to normal. The overwhelming surge of power that had twisted his muscles settled down, leaving only a faint glow around him. He sat cross-legged on his bed, letting out a long breath. He was relieved that his body had returned to its usual shape. He thought to himself that if he had stayed in that bulky, muscle-bound form, he would have had no idea how to explain it to people he knew. Time passed, and an hour later, he arrived at the Star City Martial Artists Association. The tall building stood out among the surrounding structures. Inside the hall, Su Hong walked up to the front counter. He politely told the receptionist that he was there for the martial artist assessment. She nodded and told him that a staff member would guide him soon. As he followed her through the corridor, the guide glanced at him and commented that he looked quite young. She asked if it was his first time taking the assessment. She explained that to pass as a rank 1 martial artist, a person needed at least 100 vitality and over 1,000 combat power. She wished him good luck. Su Hong simply thanked her and continued walking. Nearby, 2 martial artists noticed him. One of them wondered aloud why Su Hong had come alone, without even a master accompanying him. The other guessed that Su Hong was probably just testing things out, considering his age. Su Hong continued forward quietly as their voices faded behind him. But just as he entered, his eyes widened slightly. His attention locked onto the assessment area ahead. A staff member read out the results loudly. Panjia's vitality was 102, but his combat power only reached 992, so the assessment failed. Panjia yelled in frustration, saying he had been so close. The crowd murmured all around. Next, another candidate stepped forward. The staff read the numbers again. Li Ming, vitality 105, passed. The examiner then announced that the next stage would be the combat power test. Li Ming faced the testing machine while the examiner watched. He took a stance and struck with full strength. The room shook from the force as he shouted. A moment later, the screen displayed the result. Combat power 1763, passed. Seeing that, the crowd murmured that Li Ming's combat power was 1763, almost reaching the level of a mid-stage rank 1 martial artist. People whispered that Jiang Ming from the Raging Thunder Dojo had a disciple named Li Ming. They guessed he must be that disciple and praised his talent, noting that he even used the thunderclap fist. Su Hong listened quietly. He wondered to himself why they mentioned Jiang Ming's disciple. He recalled that Jiang Ming's disciple was Li Yan, and questioned how many disciples that dojo master actually had. While he was lost in thought, Li Ming stepped toward Su Hong and told him it was his turn. As Su Hong went inside, Li Ming smirked confidently. He thought to himself that he was taking the assessment at this age, because he was a genius. Watching Su Hong enter, he wondered if someone the same age could ever compare to him, but suddenly, shocked reactions filled the room. People stared at the screen and cursed in disbelief. They wondered if the vitality tester was broken. They couldn't understand how someone's vitality could be that high. Hearing this, Li Ming was stunned. He looked back in shock as the examiner announced the result. Su Hong, vitality, 123. Li Ming, who had mocked Su Hong earlier, shouted in frustration, saying it was impossible. He tried to steady himself. He told himself to calm down, repeating that high vitality meant nothing and that only combat power truly mattered. A moment later, the examiner announced that the combat power test was about to begin. Everyone watched as Su Hong stepped up in front of the machine. He thought about his progress. He had already advanced to a martial artist and strengthened his body, so his power had grown a lot. He guessed that using 40% of his strength should be enough for this test. But then he worried. If he held back too much, he might fail the requirement. To be safe, he decided to use 50%. He took his stance and focused. His eyes sharpened as he rushed forward, his fist glowing with power. In the next instant, he struck the machine with a powerful blue force, sending a huge shockwave through the entire room. The machine went flying back violently as his attack blasted straight into it, leaving the ground cracked behind him. The machine exploded into pieces the moment his punch landed, leaving behind streaks of motion as fragments of metal scattered across the floor. Everyone watching froze in shock. Li Ming's eyes widened as he saw that the tester had been sent flying with just a single punch, calling that level of power terrifying. But what was even more terrifying was that Su Hong didn't even use any martial arts. Then the results appeared. The broken machine displayed the number 3004, a combat power normally reached only by a rank 1 high-stage martial artist. The crowd was stunned. They said that number was unimaginable. Up on the balcony, an instructor pointed at the chaos below. He told his superior that the same kid had caused trouble again, calling him an absolute monster. The superior looked down and recognized Su Hong. That was the same man who had watched Su Hong's match in the underground arena. With a calm expression, he said that it all made sense now. Meanwhile, in a bright office filled with sunlight, the president of Star City's Martial Arts Association, Wu Linshen, sat at her desk. She complained that the Yang City branch next door kept producing geniuses and showing off every day. She worried that if Star City didn't produce any geniuses soon, she would lose her job. Suddenly, an assistant burst into the office in a panic. He yelled that a monster had appeared in the martial artist assessment. Wu Linshen was startled enough to nearly drop her phone. He quickly explained that a rank 1 early-stage youth had sent the testing machine flying using only raw physical strength, and his combat power had reached 3000. Hearing this, Wu Linshen's eyes widened. She stared ahead, shocked by the news. Meanwhile, the Martial Artists Association's central hall was busy, filled with people walking around and talking. Su Hong stood near the escalators, with a staff member dressed in a suit. The staff member told Su Hong that he would first take him to the second floor to register his martial artist identity. After that, they could go collect his allowance. Su Hong nodded and thanked him. As they spoke, someone walked down the escalator. A pair of high-heeled boots appeared at the top, and a woman's voice said that the staff member could leave because she would personally handle Su Hong. The staff member froze. Then the woman stepped fully into view. It was the president. Her long golden hair flowed behind her as she looked down at them from the escalator. The staff member called out in surprise. The president walked up to Su Hong and asked if he was Su Hong. She introduced herself as Wu Linshen, the president of the Star City branch of the Martial Dao Association, and told him to follow her. Su Hong replied politely, calling her president. At the same time, he thought to himself that this person was the president of Star City's Martial Artist Association. He had heard rumors that she was a Tier 5 martial artist. She looked different from what he had imagined. The scene then shifted to the president's office. A bright and spacious room filled with warm sunlight. Su Hong sat on a couch while the blonde president reclined casually on another seat. She looked at him with a relaxed smile and began speaking. She said she knew he was a student from Star City No. 1 High School, and mentioned that Principal Lee Chengshan had complained to her before. According to him, the school had produced only 2 ordinary Tier 1 martial artists this year, yet Lee Chengshan somehow hit a major genius like Su Hong. Su Hong looked confused, and asked why she had brought him to her office. He explained that he only wanted to register as a martial artist, and collect his allowance and guidance technique. The president waved her hand confidently. She told him not to worry, saying the people downstairs had already handled his martial artist ID and monthly allowance. As for the guidance technique, she said she would teach him personally. She stood before him and asked how much he currently understood about guidance techniques. Su Hong thought for a moment. He said the textbook mentioned that heaven and earth spiritual chi had different attributes, and that guidance techniques were methods to absorb those spiritual energies to strengthen the body. He also added that absorbing spiritual chi of different attributes required a matching guidance technique. The president lifted her hand, and a warm orange flame appeared in her palm. She explained calmly that the textbooks were not wrong, but guidance techniques were more than just cultivation methods. She gave an example. The heavenly flame guidance technique she practiced mainly absorbed fire attribute spiritual chi. While it strengthened her body, it also gave her attacks the power of fire. As she spoke, the flame in her hand burned brighter and sharper. She then released the flame outward. A stream of fire shot across the room like a blazing whip, lighting up the entire office. She said that if someone could release attribute attacks externally, it would also increase their attack range. But for a Tier 1 martial artist, even carrying a small trace of attribute power was already impressive. Su Hong stared in surprise. He asked if guidance techniques could actually be used for attacking. He thought they were only for absorbing spiritual chi to cultivate. The textbooks never mentioned this part. The president raised her hand again, and symbols representing different elements appeared beside her. She explained that heaven and earth spiritual chi had 7 attributes: metal, wood, water, fire, earth, thunder, and wind. Each had its strengths and weaknesses, but in pure attack power, thunder ranked first, metal second, and fire third. She added that the guidance technique someone could cultivate depended on their compatibility. As she spoke, she lifted a glowing red crystal ball from the table. Su Hong nodded slowly. He realized it wasn't possible to cultivate any guidance technique freely. One had to match their own compatibility first. The president held the glowing crystal ball in her hands. She explained that it was used to test a person's compatibility. The brighter and larger the glow, the higher the compatibility. She said that ordinary martial artists usually had only 20 to 30%. Her own compatibility was around 80%, which was already considered extremely high. She looked at Su Hong with confidence, and told him that someone as talented as him would definitely go beyond 90%. As she spoke, the flame inside the crystal disappeared, and she handed the ball to him. Su Hong looked at the crystal ball quietly. He thought to himself that President Wu had become a Tier 5 martial artist at such a young age, and was already considered a genius, yet her compatibility was only 80%. If he reached 90%, it would be too unbelievable. When Su Hong placed his hands on the ball, a blinding light erupted instantly. President Wu's eyes widened in shock. The entire crystal ball burst with intense red light, filling the whole room. The president jumped in excitement, and shouted that it was completely full. His fire attribute compatibility had reached 100%. She rushed to Su Hong and grabbed his shoulders, asking if he understood what this meant. He admitted that he didn't. She explained with great excitement that this meant he could absorb 100% of fire attribute spiritual chi from heaven and earth, without wasting even a single trace. She then explained calmly that her own compatibility was only 80%. Because of that, she lost 20% of the fire attribute spiritual chi every time she absorbed it. Even so, she had already reached Tier 5 as a martial artist, and had become the president of the Star City Martial Artists Association. Then she leaned closer to him. With a confident smile, she said that his future achievements would definitely be higher than hers. She admitted that she never expected a small place like Star City to produce someone as talented as him. Someone who was not weaker than geniuses from the Magic City Imperial Capital region. Su Hong looked at the crystal ball in his hands. He thought quietly to himself that the fire attribute was good, but he still preferred the thunder attribute. He wished he had the thunder spirit attribute instead. Just as he said that, the crystal ball suddenly burst with bright golden lightning. Thunder-like patterns flashed inside it, as powerful light filled the room. When he lifted the glowing sphere, President Wu stared at him in shock. He looked at her and said that his thunder attribute compatibility also seemed to be 100%. She stayed silent, unable to respond. President Wu stared at the test results in shock. She wondered if it was real or fake because the thunder and fire attributes both showed 100% compatibility. She felt overwhelmed and thought to herself that Su Hong was a monster, something far beyond normal. Just then, Su Hong, now holding a green crystal ball, spoke nervously. He told the president that the wind attribute also seemed to be 100%. Hearing this, the president looked even more stunned, unable to believe what she was seeing. She quietly muttered that the situation was too outrageous. A few minutes passed. The room became calm. Sunlight spilled in through the windows, while the two of them sat on separate couches. The president leaned back weakly, still trying to process everything. She slowly sat up and wiped the sweat from her forehead. She whispered that something was not right. All the attributes she tested were full. Every single one was at 100%. She wondered if she was dreaming. Her thoughts drifted back to her past. She once believed she was a top-tier genius. Becoming a 30-year-old Tier 5 martial artist was as rare as phoenix feathers or unicorn horns. But when she once faced an opponent beyond common sense, she realized she was just an ordinary person. She remembered standing before a massive monster. The ground cracked beneath her feet as the beast roared loudly. In that moment she understood that to defeat something beyond common sense she would need someone just as extraordinary. She then recalled a man standing atop that fallen creature, looking down with calm eyes. Only those who were also beyond common sense could fight such beings. Back in the room, she looked at Su Hong and thought that he was an existence ordinary people could never understand. On the other hand, Su Hong was lost in thought. Thinking seriously, he muttered that all 7 of his attributes were at 100%. If he focused only on thunder and ignored the other 6, it felt like a waste. He sighed, saying the situation was distressing. Then he turned to the president with a smile and asked if she could give him copies of the guidance techniques for all 7 attributes. The president stared at him speechlessly. She explained slowly that human energy was limited. No matter how talented someone was, it was recommended to cultivate only 1 or 2 attributes. She gave an example. In the past, someone had tried cultivating all 7 guidance techniques at the same time. Even after training for decades, that person remained only a Tier 1 martial artist. Hearing that, Su Hong told her that he could not choose a path yet, so he wanted to cultivate all attributes first and decide later which one to focus on. President Wu agreed, but warned him not to fool around and not to waste such rare talent. She then asked Su Hong if his school's monthly exam was coming soon. Su Hong nodded and asked why she suddenly mentioned it. President Wu explained that tensions on the All-Heavens battlefield were growing stronger. A huge war between the 10,000 races and the human race could break out at any moment. Because of this, nations had invested a lot of resources to create a genius training camp, and she wanted to recommend him. She said that if he could take first place in the school's monthly exam, she would give him a recommendation spot. Su Hong repeated her words softly, thinking about the war of the 10,000 races and the training camp. He then remembered the tragedy from over 10 years ago, the war that took the lives of all his relatives except his uncle and aunt. He clenched his fists and agreed, saying he would definitely work hard. Images of his past flashed in his mind, crying as a child, his uncle comforting him, and scenes of fear and chaos. He whispered to his uncle and aunt in his heart, promising that he would never let that tragedy happen again. Finally, Su Hong strengthened his resolve. He told himself that he must become strong enough to protect everyone around him. Late at night, Su Hong's home stood quietly under the dark sky. Inside, Su Hong sat at the table with a bright smile. He held an identification card in both hands and told his uncle and aunt that he had officially become a martial artist. His aunt wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes, happy and emotional. His uncle trembled with excitement as he held the card, unable to believe that Su Hong had really succeeded. They both praised him, saying that he had become a capable young man. Su Hong explained that a Tier 1 martial artist received a monthly allowance of 10,000, so his uncle no longer needed to work with such difficulty. His uncle laughed happily and said that Su Hong had now become the pillar of their family and that they would listen to him from now on. Su Hong smiled gently and promised that he would support the family from this day forward. Later that night, Su Hong sat alone on the rooftop. He crossed his legs and began cultivating. Orange energy flames burst out around him as he breathed steadily, focusing all his strength on training. Su Hong's eyes suddenly lit up with a bright, fiery glow. Power surged inside him, and his stare turned sharp and intense. The next second, he punched the air with determination. Energy gathered around his arm, spinning wildly as flames wrapped around his fist. He punched out with full force, sending a wave of heat and wind across the rooftop. When the energy faded, Su Hong looked at his fist. It was smoking lightly, He stared at it in confusion and wondered why the technique felt so weak. He asked himself if this was really the basic level of the guidance technique and why it had no power at all. Then a glowing system panel appeared in front of him. It showed his name and different stats. It also displayed a new line for guidance technique. He realized that he had actually learned the Heavenly Flame guidance technique. But it was only at level 1 with 5%. Su Hong became even more surprised. He wondered since when guidance techniques had levels. President Wu had never mentioned anything like that. If techniques could be leveled up, she would have told him. He looked back at the panel, thinking deeply. Maybe this guidance technique was different. Then a thought struck him. Su Hong stared at the glowing screen in shock. He couldn't believe it, but excitement spread across his face as he realized the truth. Only he could level it up. Su Hong stood before the glowing blue panel and stared at it seriously. He asked himself how he was supposed to upgrade guidance techniques, wondering if they were improved the same way as martial value. Just as he touched his system window, a red warning screen flashed in front of him. The panel showed the message: insufficient martial value. Seeing that, Su Hong sighed. He decided to first cultivate the rest of the guidance techniques. He told himself he would figure out how to earn more martial value later. He then sat cross-legged on the rooftop, surrounded by books. Flames of spiritual energy burst around his body, brightening the whole surrounding. Several hours later, Su Hong's inner view appeared, showing 7 glowing points of spiritual qi. Each point represented a different guidance technique. Thunder guidance technique, level 1. Water marsh guidance technique, level 1. Thick earth guidance technique, level 1. Spirit wind guidance technique, level 1, and others. The 7 different attributes of spiritual qi pushed against each other. Su Hong gritted his teeth as sweat rolled down his face. He understood why President Wu once said that a genius who cultivated 7 guidance techniques had stayed a Tier 1 martial artist for decades. He continued to channel the power. Flames rose around him, and he tried to control the energy. He noticed that although all 7 types of spiritual qi existed in his body, he could only use one attribute at a time. A ball of fiery spiritual qi formed in his hand as he breathed heavily. That bright flame swirled in Su Hong's hand as he watched it closely. He had realized that if he forced himself to use a second attribute, the 2 glowing forces instantly collided, followed by a violent explosion. It was a huge explosion of spiritual energies that shook his rooftop. The clash made both attributes disappear. Su Hong narrowed his eyes. He wondered if thunder and fire really couldn't be combined. Their natures felt similar, so why did they keep rejecting each other? He tried again. Thunder light and fire sparks wrapped around his fingers. The 2 forces touched. Another explosion burst out, and the energy scattered into the air. Still sweating, Su Hong clenched his teeth. He refused to give up. He yelled in frustration, telling himself to try one more time. Flashes burst from the rooftop again and again through the night, as he repeatedly attempted to fuse the attributes. When dawn arrived the next day, the building still glowed faintly from the leftover sparks of Su Hong's non-stop training. He breathed heavily, sweat running down his face. He told himself he just needed a little bit more. In his hand, the lightning and flame flickered and shook. He stared at it, insisting softly that he only needed a tiny bit more. He gritted his teeth and shouted for the power to fuse. Lightning and fire wrapped around his arms as he forced the 2 energies together. He raised his hand again and yelled, calling for fusion. A bright flame exploded in his palm. After trying through the whole night, he finally succeeded. He looked at the flame in his hand with relief and satisfaction. He then straightened his clothes and said it was time to go out and test the power. The scene shifted to Star City's Citizen Martial Arts Square, a large open plaza with a tall clock tower at its center. Training robots stood ready around the area. Su Hong stood in front of the spider-shaped combat tester. He pointed at it and said that he had switched to a Tier 3 combat power tester. Hoping it wouldn't break this time, he remembered that 50% power had reached 3,000 combat power. So he decided to try 30% power first. He raised his glowing fist and struck. The machine displayed the result. The number went above 2,300. He looked surprised. At 30% strength, the power should have been around 1,800, but it had increased by 500 more. He looked at the lightning burning in his hand, and thought that just the power of thunder alone was already this strong. Then he clenched his hand again, and aimed. He wondered how strong the fused power of thunder and fire would be. He released the combined force, and the explosion of lightning and flames shot forward. His punch smashed into the combat tester with overwhelming speed and power. The screen flashed new numbers. Su Hong stared in surprise. It showed 3041, far higher than he expected. He muttered in shock, wondering how it had passed 3000. He stood beside the damaged tester, rubbing his hands. He thought about how, with only his physical strength and the fused thunder fire, 30% of his power already surpassed a Tier 1 high-stage martial artist. Then he glanced at his own status and sighed. His vitality was only 123 points, which made the result even more terrifying. He thought that if the power was already this strong with just 2 fused attributes, he wondered what kind of strength he would have if he could fuse all 7 attributes. The thought of combining them filled him with excitement. He looked at the flames and lightning dancing in his hand, and smiled. He decided to go back and try fusing 3 attributes next time. Later, he was shown lying flat on the rooftop, exhausted. His shirt was gone, and his body was drenched in sweat. Small lights floated around him as he breathed heavily. He thought about the difficulty again. Fusing 2 attributes was already hard, but fusing 3 felt many times harder. He had rearranged and combined all 7 attribute patterns repeatedly, yet he still made no progress at all. Even so, he kept thinking about how powerful it could be if he finally succeeded. He looked at the system screen and wondered if increasing the level of his guidance techniques would help him succeed in fusing attributes. The screen listed the techniques he had. Thunder Guidance Technique, Level 1. Heavenly Flame Guidance Technique, Level 1. Water Marsh Guidance Technique, Level 1. Thick Earth Guidance Technique Level 1, and Spirit Wind Guidance Technique Level 1. He reminded himself that the monthly exam was tomorrow, and he needed to earn as much martial value as he could. The next day, all the students gathered at Star City No. 1 High School. Students stood on the field as the principal walked onto the stage. The principal told them that this monthly exam would be different. Because the front lines were under heavy pressure, a special training camp would now be held every year to select geniuses for focused training. He explained that the training camp had many resources, powerful martial arts, rare pills, and even grandmasters who would serve as instructors. The top 3 students in the monthly exam would be allowed to join Star City's training camp. Hearing that, the students became excited. Some shouted about wanting to enter the genius training camp. Others were shocked that a Tier 7 grandmaster might be an instructor, since even their principal was only Tier 3. Amid the noise, Su Hong stared ahead with a tired face as he remembered President Wu telling him that if he got first place, she would give him a spot. But didn't the top 3 all receive spots anyway? A friend of Su Hong told him that Chen Shan and Li Tu had already become Tier 1 martial artists. Beside them, several others had also reached the basic level of Thunder Rush Fist, and he felt they had no chance of winning. Su Hong looked confused. He thought about how he had only missed school for 10 days. Yet those students had already broken through to martial artist. His friend explained that recently, the principal had asked Senior Chen Tian, the instructor of Thunder Rush Fist, to give private lessons to talented students. Because of this, Chen Shan and Li Tu's vitality had already exceeded 100, and their Thunder Rush Fist could echo 3 times. While they were talking, suddenly Chen Shan and Li Tu walked forward confidently. One of them said he wanted everyone to know who the real No. 1 genius was. The other replied that when he beat him to the ground he hoped he would stay just as confident. Elsewhere, as Su Hong's principal came down from the stage, instructor Chen Tian asked him if he had found the genius who performed the 9 Echoes Thunder Rush Fist. Principal Li answered that he had searched everywhere recently, and didn't think that person was from his school. While they were talking, they suddenly heard some noise behind them and turned. A tall man in a black suit walked up with 2 others. It was Jiang Ming, who had taught Su Hong that spear technique. Along with him were Li Ming and Li Yan. Jiang Ming joked, calling Principal Li, Old Li, asking why he looked like his wife had run away. The principal looked at Jiang Ming and asked what he was doing at his school. Jiang Ming smiled and said that the quality of this year's students didn't seem very good. He then explained that he had brought 2 disciples with him. After the monthly exam, he suggested letting the first-place student come over for a spar. Hearing that, Principal Li's expression tightened. He knew that Jiang Ming had clearly come to embarrass him. He thought that if he refused, it would be like admitting that his school had no talented students at all. Jiang Ming continued speaking lightly. He said the students here looked weak anyway, so if the principal refused, he could understand. Hearing that, instructor Chen Tian snapped back angrily, asking if Jiang Ming was looking for trouble on purpose. Nearby, one of Jiang Ming's students, Li Yan, pointed toward the crowd. He told his teacher there was bad news. The kid named Su Hong had appeared. Jiang Ming looked confused and repeated the name, asking which Su they meant. As he turned toward the group of students, he suddenly recognized Su Hong standing at the back. Jiang Ming shouted in surprise. He realized it was that same little monster he had seen before. Su Hong looked at them calmly, a faint smile on his face as the crowd blurred around him. Jiang Ming stared in shock as sweat formed on his face. He realized that the kid they had been talking about was actually from Nome High School. He looked at his two disciples and grew even more troubled. He thought that if Li Yan and Li Ming fought Su Hong, they would definitely lose. Rather than letting them lose face in front of everyone, he needed to avoid the match. He quickly put on a smile and waved his hand. He told Principal Li and Instructor Chen not to be angry. He said he had only been joking and that there would be no competition. He even called his own disciples trash, saying they could never compare to the other school's students. Li Yan and Li Ming immediately shouted that they conceded. Hearing that, both Principal Li and Instructor Chen were furious. Their faces twisted in anger as they thought about how these men dared to mock them so sarcastically. Soon after, the scene shifted to the arena. A loud announcement echoed across the stadium, calling for match number 666, Su Hong, to begin. From the stands, Su Hong's friend leaned forward anxiously. He told his colleague that Su Hong's first opponent was a quasi-martial artist, and that this was extremely unlucky. He then called out to Su Hong, telling him that he could try to fight but shouldn't push himself. Getting injured at the start of the tournament wouldn't be worth it. Su Hong's opponent, Chen Peng, stepped forward and pointed at Su Hong. He asked if Su Hong planned to walk down on his own, or if he should beat him down instead. He clenched his fist and was about to charge straight at Su Hong with confidence. But before he could even react, Su Hong moved. He suddenly disappeared from his place, and the next second he appeared in front of Chen Peng. His figure flashed, and with one clean strike, he sent Chen Peng flying through the air. The impact was so strong that Chen Peng flipped upside down and crashed hard onto the ground. Everyone watching stared in shock. One student shouted in disbelief, asking when Su Hong had become so fierce. The others were stunned into silence. Su Hong stood calmly in the center of the field, surrounded by rising smoke. His posture was relaxed, but the crowd trembled. They realized what had happened. Su Hong had defeated a quasi-martial artist in one single move. Su Hong stood calmly on the battlefield, while another opponent lay defeated at his feet. The crowd shouted in disbelief, saying that Su Hong had won again and wondering how he had become so strong. Some even questioned if he had already reached the level of a Tier 1 martial artist. They announced that the next match would be the final battle. From the stands, Instructor Chen stared at Su Hong in confusion, wondering where this student had suddenly come from and why he hadn't appeared when private tutoring was offered. Principal Li blamed himself, calling it a failure in his own duties. Both of them discussed Su Hong further. Principal Li wondered how he had never noticed such a promising student before. By not training him early, he felt he had wasted a real talent. Instructor Chen said he felt Su Hong looked familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen him. They then turned their attention to the ongoing semi-final match between Chen Shan and Li Tu, saying the winner would be decided soon. Watching their fight, they noted that the two fighters were evenly matched, making it difficult to tell who would win or lose. On the stage, Li Tu shouted at Chen Shan. He said that since they both used the same technique, the Three Echoes Thunder Rush Fist, Chen Shan would need to use his strongest move if he wanted any chance of winning. He then launched forward, using the Thunder Rush Fist with full force. Li Tu charged forward with a fierce expression, his fist slamming down with explosive force. Chen Shan answered with a sharp shout as he blocked, the impact blasting wind across the floor. Chen Shan's voice rose in anger as flames burst around his fist. He yelled at Li Tu to watch carefully, declaring himself the true number one of the school. From the sidelines, the students stared in shock. They shouted that Chen Shan was performing attribute externalization, unable to believe he had already mastered it. They recognized the blazing fist as the fire attribute, known for its immense power, second only to thunder. Li Tu stepped forward with a calm smirk as water-like energy flowed around his arm. He replied that attribute externalization was nothing special, and anyone could do it. The students gasped again. They shouted that Li Tu could also externalize attributes, and his was the metal attribute, a force even stronger than fire in combat. Li Tu dashed ahead, chains of metallic energy swirling around his fists. He announced that he also possessed this power as he launched his attack. His punches echoed with 5 sounds. Chen Shan, who charged forward, was shocked when he saw Li Tu unleash the 5 Echoes Thunder Rush Fist. A violent impact followed as Li Tu's strike landed cleanly. blasting his opponent backward in a streak of motion and shockwaves that tore across the arena floor. From the viewing platform, Principal Lee and Instructor Chen watched with widening eyes. Principal Lee muttered that Lee Tu had been hiding his strength deeply. Instructor Chen added that within just 10 days, Lee Tu had managed to master attribute externalization and even bring the Thunder Rush Fist to the micro level. They agreed that Lee Tu's talent was exceptional. Principal Lee then said there was no need to watch the final match. With micro-level Thunder Rush Fist and the metal attribute, he believed Su Hong had no chance of beating Lee Tu. Instructor Chen sighed that if Su Hong had learned a guidance technique and mastered Thunder Rush Fist as well, he might have stood a chance. Just then, Jiang Ming walked over and confidently placed a bet. He wagered 50,000 that Su Hong would take first place. Hearing that, Principal Lee and Instructor Chen were shocked. Principal Lee asked Jiang Ming if he was crazy. He said although Su Hong was good, how could he possibly win without a guidance technique? But Instructor Chen only laughed, saying that if Jiang Ming was delivering money to him, he would gladly take it. Soon, the announcer declared the final battle. Number 01, Lee Tu, against number 666, Su Hong. The match began. Students shouted from around the arena. Some cheered for Su Hong to seize the championship. Others urged Lee Tu not to lose face. The two fighters stepped onto the circular stage, facing each other as the final showdown began. Lee Tu stood confidently, telling Su Hong that he was lucky. He said Su Hong had only reached the finals because he hadn't met him or Chen Shan earlier. Su Hong looked calm. After hunting so many ferocious beasts, he felt that the students here were too weak. Now he finally thought someone worth watching had appeared. Lis Tu stepped forward with a grin. He said that since Su Hong reached the finals, he could call himself the second strongest in the school. Su Hong simply asked who the first was. Lis Tu stomped on the ground and declared that the number one was himself. He rushed in with a fierce attack, saying he only needed one move to show how big the gap between them was. The students watching gasped in panic. One of them exclaimed that Lee Tu was using the 5 Echoes Thunder Rush Fist right from the start, wondering if he was actually taking things this seriously. Another student nervously said it was already over. With the Thunder Rush Fist coming out, there was nothing left to fight. Su Hong was bound to lose. But Su Hong's eyes glowed with a sharp golden light, as power built up inside him. In the next moment, flames burst from his fist, and he shot forward. He said he only wanted to see where the limits of his physical body lay. The students panicked even more when they saw him rushing straight in. One shouted that Su Hong must be crazy, he didn't even dodge, choosing to meet the attack head-on. Another yelled that even if he wanted to die, this wasn't the way, urging the referee to save him quickly. The two fighters collided in the middle of the arena, their fists smashing together with explosive force. Shockwaves blasted outward as the impact shook the ground. They clashed again and again, their blows sending bursts of energy through the air. Su Hong met his opponent's thunderous attack directly, the impact scattering chains of water and sparks in every direction. Lee Tu stared in shock, realizing that Su Hong had actually neutralized his 5 Echoes Thunder Rush Fist instantly with just 5 punches. The two fighters clashed again, their fists colliding in a storm of blows as chains of energy whipped around them. Lee Tu gritted his teeth, wondering if Su Hong was a monster, because every punch Su Hong threw felt overwhelmingly heavy. Up in the stands, students watched with wide eyes. Su Hong's teacher exclaimed that Su Hong wasn't using any martial skills at all, yet he was evenly matched with Lee Tu, who was using the 5 Echoes Thunder Rush Fist. Su Hong's friend shouted that Su Hong's strength was far too terrifying. Principal Lee and Instructor Chen also looked stunned. Instructor Chen said that Su Hong must possess some kind of special physique, otherwise his strength wouldn't be this exaggerated. Principal Lee burst into laughter, proud that his school had actually produced a genius with a special physique. But Instructor Chen beside him shook his head. He said that although Su Hong's strength was astonishing, Lee Tu had already condensed an attribute, so Su Hong still held no real advantage. On the arena, the clash sent both fighters sliding back across the arena floor. Su Hong steadied himself as flames flickered around his fist, while Lee Tu skidded several meters away, forced backward by the impact. Lee Tu's eyes widened with anger and disbelief. He shouted that Su Hong shouldn't act arrogant, because the winner could only be him. Blue lightning surged around his arms as he powered up again. He then lunged forward, shouting for Su Hong to accept defeat. His fists, wrapped in chains of energy, tore through the air as he charged straight at him. Su Hong watched calmly. He thought to himself that he had originally planned to test how far he could fight Lee Tu, using only his physical body. But Li Tu had already stopped holding back and was now attacking at full power. Since Li Tu had gone all out, Su Hong decided he should also show some respect. Flames burst from his own fist as he sprinted forward to meet the attack head-on. Lightning burst across the arena as Li Tu shouted in shock. He looked at Su Hong with wide eyes as he recognized his technique. Realizing what he was seeing, he yelled that Su Hong could also use attribute externalization. Principal Li and Instructor Chen on the side trembled as golden lightning wrapped around the arena. Instructor Chen stammered in disbelief, unable to finish his sentence. Principal Li could only mutter in shock, saying he had no idea how this was even possible. Both of them were stunned that Su Hong possessed the Thunder attribute and had mastered the Thunder guidance technique. Instructor Chen explained that a special physique combined with the Thunder attribute, which had the strongest attack power, made this talent terrifying. Inside the arena, Su Hong and Li Tu clashed again, lightning and chains exploding in all directions. Li Tu stared forward, realizing something alarming. He admitted that Su Hong's Thunder attribute was even stronger than his own Metal attribute. Su Hong looked back with a calm, confident expression. Lightning coiled around his body as he spoke. He told Li Tu that since he had revealed his ultimate move, he would now answer it properly. Su Hong narrowed his eyes as lightning flickered around him. He told Li Tu that he would show his ultimate move as well. Golden light burned in his eyes as thunder wrapped around his fists. He also used his Thunder Rush fist technique as he charged forward. In the next moment, his strike landed with explosive force. The scene shook as repeated impacts echoed, one after another, driving Li Tu backward. Su Hong's blows landed so quickly that 9 echo bursts exploded across the arena. Li Tu's eyes widened in disbelief. While falling, he shouted that 9 echoes were impossible. Blood burst from his mouth as he crashed to the ground. Su Hong stood over him with a firm expression, thunder still crackling around his fists. The students in the stands fell silent for a moment. Shock spread across their faces. They were all speechless. A student finally spoke, stunned, asking if Su Hong had really won. Excitement erupted as others shouted that Su Hong had reached the perfect realm. Thunder Rush Fist, 9 echoes. They cheered that his technique was even fiercer than the teacher who taught it. Instructor Chen and Principal Li stared in shock. Instructor Chen stuttered out that Su Hong had produced 9 echoes. He asked if Su Hong was the same genius who had disappeared from school that day. Principal Li trembled as he said that this wasn't just a genius. This was the dragon of Star City No. 1 High School. Instructor Chen wiped his sweat and said that once a monster like Su Hong entered the training camp, he couldn't imagine how devastated the other geniuses with powerful backgrounds would be. Not far away, Su Hong walked forward calmly in his school tracksuit. Looking at him, Instructor Chen spoke with admiration, saying that a golden carp was not meant to stay in the pond. Once it met wind and cloud, it would transform into a dragon. To him, Star City was nothing more than a small puddle for Su Hong. Principal Li nodded with confidence. He said that in the upcoming training camp, Su Hong was destined to be a dragon rising from the abyss, soaring into the sky. He added that the Magic City Imperial Capital, and even the battlefield of 10,000 races, were the true places where a monster like Su Hong would shine the brightest.